Hello to everyone watching the Paranormal M channel. The moment is finally here. I get to sit down with the mic and share my paranormal experiences from around the world to help you relax and sleep better. And I'm still reading your comments, so don't forget to leave one and tell me where you're from. Thank you so much for sending in so many of your own paranormal stories. Now, let's listen to these experiences and wish each other a good night's sleep. Please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. So, this is one of those stories I still tell and then kind of laugh afterward. Like, what was my life for that stretch of time? For a few months, almost every single night, I'd have this presence show up right when I was turning off the last light in the living room, like clockwork. Here's the background. My dad's parents had this shared plan. Both of them wanted to be cremated, and then their ashes were supposed to be combined pretty quickly. But it was 2020, and not for any big, dramatic headline reason. Just one of those years where everything kept getting delayed and plans kept falling apart. My grandpa, let's call him Eddie because that name fits the vibe, ended up not getting handled the way he'd asked. His ashes were sitting in this large, matte black container, kind of like a tall canister, with his name printed on it. It wasn't even an urn. It was more like a temporary holding thing. And because no one quite knew what to do next, it got stuck in the back room with a bunch of random storage junk. Not dumped out, not moved along, just parked. And honestly, at first, it didn't feel like a big deal. Like if Eddie was around, he didn't seem to care. Until the day he did care. There was supposed to be a pickup or drop-off, something that would finally move things forward, and then it got canceled at the last minute. I wasn't even home when it happened, so I didn't find out until later. But apparently Eddie found out immediately, because that night, I turned off the final lamp, and someone was just there. For a split second, my brain did the normal thing and went, "Oh, that's Dad getting up for the bathroom." Except it wasn't Dad. It was taller than me, but not hugely. Definitely a masculine shape. And it wasn't see-through or wispy or like in movies. It was a solid black silhouette in the dark, so dense it blocked what little light was coming in from outside. Like a person standing right in front of you. And the feeling coming off him was unmistakable. Furious. Not at me, though. Just angry in general. Like someone who'd been disrespected and was done being patient. I didn't even fully understand what I was seeing at first. I just froze, staring like, why is there a man-shaped shadow in my living room? And then I did the most awkward thing possible. I kind of spoke out loud and went, "I can't do messages." Because here's the thing. I hate the whole tell so-and-so this business. It's weird. It's uncomfortable. You're basically walking up to a living person and saying, "Hi, I know this sounds insane, but your dead relative wants me to tell you something." No, thank you. So I tried to just sidestep around him, like he was a grumpy stranger blocking the hallway. And then, without warning, he shifted, like instantly, right up against me, chest to chest, close enough that if he'd been physical, I would have bumped him. I didn't have time to stop, so I just walked through him. That part is hard to describe. It wasn't cold exactly. It was more like stepping through a dense patch of air that shouldn't be there. And it was awkward in this hilariously human way. Like both of us were thinking, well, that was weird. Nothing hurt. It didn't feel dangerous, just startling and oddly personal, like someone trying really hard to be noticed. And then he kept doing it. Night after night. Same timing. Last light goes off, and there he is. Sometimes right in front of me, sometimes a couple feet away. Always angry, always very present. After that, he stopped blocking me. He still showed up, but he'd be off to the side, like a man pacing in a room, simmering, just looming there while I went about turning off lights and trying to pretend this was normal. And then, this is the part that still makes my eyebrows go up. My dad's sister came to visit. Let's call her Brenda. I stayed out of her way because we do not get along, and I didn't want the drama. I barely spoke to her. I had no idea what she did while she was here. But that night, I turned off the last light like usual, and the living room was just a living room. No silhouette, no pressure in the air, no angry pacing man made of shadow, just darkness, normal darkness. And I remember standing there for a second thinking, oh, so that's what the room feels like when it's just a room. The next morning, I mentioned it casually, like it was the most normal sentence in the world. I said something like, hey, I've been seeing this angry ghost guy every night for months, but last night was the first time he didn't show up. And someone, very calmly, goes, yeah, Brenda took Eddie's ashes yesterday. That was it. Mystery solved, apparently. He never did the nightly angry visitor thing again. He has shown up a couple times since then, but it felt completely different. Lighter, calmer. Like whatever the problem was, it got fixed. Like he finally went, okay, thank you. That's all I wanted. So, yeah. Just a strange few months where the living room came with a built-in angry shadow man until somebody finally moved the container like they were supposed to. Honestly, I get it. If I were stuck in a back room in a canister after making very clear plans, I'd probably haunt somebody too. So, this happened a little while back, and I still don't quite know what to do with it, but I want to tell you the way it felt. A few years ago, I lost a friend of mine really suddenly. His name was Evan. He was only 22, and it was the kind of loss that doesn't fit into your brain no matter how many times you turn it over. After he passed, I had a couple dreams where he showed up, but they were always harmless. Silly even. Like we were all kids again, messing around, laughing at nothing, the way we used to. Nothing heavy, nothing that stuck. Then late December rolled around, and my body started doing this weird thing. It started as just feeling off, like the beginning of a cold that never fully became one. But within a few days, it got worse. I had this fever that would come and go, and my joints ached in this deep, all-over way that made me feel twice my age. I found swollen lymph nodes along my neck that kept getting more noticeable. I'm 27, and I remember thinking, this is not normal. This is not just tired. I did what you're supposed to do. I went in. I got blood work. I got tested for everything they could think of. COVID, mono, Lyme, autoimmune stuff. Even the scary ones you hope never come up in conversation. And every single time, the results came back. Negative. No answers. Just more waiting. Eventually, my doctor got more urgent about it and scheduled imaging, an ultrasound of the lymph nodes, because they weren't shrinking. They were getting bigger. And honestly, that word, urgent, does something to you. It turns the volume up in your head. The night before that appointment, I had a dream about Evan again. In the dream, I'm sitting on these bleachers at our high school football field. It's a homecoming game, bright stadium lights, the cold air that smells like popcorn and damp grass, that whole familiar scene you don't realize your body remembers until you're suddenly back in it. To my left is Evan. To my right is another friend, Marcus. And behind me is Tessa, leaning forward between the rows like she's listening in. We're talking the way we used to, like no time has passed. And at first it feels completely normal. And then this thought hits me, sharp and clear like someone flipped a switch. You shouldn't be here. I look at Marcus like I need him to confirm I'm not losing my mind, and I whisper, kind of urgently, Do you see Evan? Marcus doesn't hesitate. He just nods like it's the most natural thing in the world and says, "Yeah, I see him too." That's when I turn back, and Evan is looking straight at me, not smiling exactly, but calm, steady, like he's trying to make sure I really hear him. And in this quiet, even voice, he says, "One of you is next." No drama, no menace, just a statement, like he was reading something off a list. And then I wake up. I woke up drenched in sweat, like my shirt was stuck to my back, and my heart was pounding so hard it felt loud in the room. It took me a minute just to remember where I was, and when I did, I felt this flood of emotions all at once, because part of me was happy. I know that sounds strange, but it was this tiny spark of joy that I'd seen him again, that I'd heard his voice. And then the anxiety came right behind it, because what kind of dream is that? What does it mean? Why now? But the strange part is, the dream itself didn't feel dark. It felt peaceful, quiet, almost gentle. And I've always been the type to spiral. I've always been a little bit of a hypochondriac, always bracing for the worst, always terrified of death like it's a shadow waiting around the corner. But Evan's face, his calm, the way he held my gaze, did something to me. Even with those words, even with how unsettling they are on paper, the feeling he left me with was comfort. Like he wasn't there to scare me. Like he was telling me, whatever happens, you're going to be okay. The next day, I went to the ultrasound appointment like I was supposed to. And then I was back in that horrible in-between space, waiting for results, waiting to be told what's next, waiting to find out if there's a name for what's happening in my body. My doctor still didn't want to throw antibiotics at it without understanding what it was, so there wasn't even the comfort of, "Here, take this." Just waiting. But I'll tell you the truth. Ever since that dream, something in me has shifted a little. I'm still scared. I'm still human. I still have moments where my mind runs wild. But if my time ever really is coming, I don't think I feel the same panic I used to. That dream didn't answer my medical questions, but it softened something in my chest. It made the idea of the unknown feel just slightly less unbearable. And I don't know why that happened. I don't know what dreams are, or if they mean anything, or if grief just finds weird ways to visit you when you're vulnerable. I just know that, for the first time in a long time, I felt a little more peace than fear. Hey, can I tell you something that's been sitting heavy on my chest? So, earlier today, I got a message from someone I don't really know well. She's a classmate of my church friend, Adrian. She said, Adrian got into an accident, and then she sent a photo from the scene. And the second I saw it, my whole body reacted before my mind could catch up. My chest tightened like someone had grabbed it. I started breathing too fast, and my hands were actually trembling. It was that instant physical kind of fear, like your body knows something is wrong. And then, the memories hit me. Near the end of last year, sometime before the holidays, I had this really serious conversation with Adrian. I told him I'd had a bad dream about him. In the dream, he was out riding. He's a cyclist in real life, always on his bike. And something happened on the road. There was a collision involving a motorcycle. It wasn't vague either. It felt weirdly specific. And the part that keeps bothering me is that I remember one detail so clearly it basically glued itself to my brain. The motorcycle's color. In the dream, it was this bright teal-green shade, so distinct that when I tried to brush the dream off, that color kept flashing back at me like a warning sign. At first, I didn't even want to tell him the dream. Growing up, I always heard this thing like, don't tell bad dreams out loud or you'll give them power, you know? Like saying it makes it real. So I tried to keep it simple. I just told him, please be careful. I had a dream that scared me. But he kept asking. He wouldn't let it go. He was like, what did you see? Tell me exactly. So eventually, I told him everything. Even the color. Even the way it happened in the dream. And I remember feeling a little silly saying it out loud, but also, I couldn't ignore how real it felt to me. After that, life moved on the way it always does. The conversation faded into the background, but I didn't completely forget it. Every so often, when he'd mention going out for a ride, I'd still say, please be careful, like it was the one small thing I could do. And then, this happened. What makes it even more unsettling is that, not long ago, his dad had just helped him get his first motorcycle. He was excited about it, like this new chapter, this new freedom. And then, not long after that, the accident. When I started putting it together, the dream, the warning, the motorcycle, that specific color detail, the timing, I felt nauseous, like genuinely sick. Because it lined up in a way that didn't feel random to me in that moment. It felt too neat, too matched up, like something had been set a long time ago and I was only realizing it now. And I know how this sounds. I do. I know coincidences happen. I know our brains are pattern-making machines. I know accidents can happen to anyone, any day. But I can't shake the feeling, this crawling, lingering feeling, that my mind somehow reached forward and grabbed a glimpse of something before it happened. And now I'm stuck in this loop of questions. Am I overthinking it? Why do dreams sometimes feel so real only after something happens? And how can a dream be so specific that it makes you feel like you already lived the moment before it even arrived? I'm honestly asking because it's been weighing on me, like I'm carrying it around in my body, and I really need someone else's thoughts because I don't want to spiral alone with this. So, this happened to me years ago, and I can still feel it in my chest when I think about it. It was one of those quiet mornings where the house feels extra still. My dad had already left for work, so it was just me and my older brother Eli at home. He was in his room doing his own thing, and I was in the kitchen putting the kettle on, just making tea, nothing special. While the water was heating up, I wandered into the living room to wait. I remember being in a genuinely good mood, like the day was wide open and I was excited for it. The house was chilly, older house, drafty windows, so I grabbed this throw blanket off the back of the couch and wrapped it around my shoulders. But when I flicked it up, it slid over my head for a second, like a hood. And the second I pulled it back down, everything changed. I was still in my dad's house technically, but it didn't look like his house anymore. The whole living room had shifted into this warm, polished, late 60s vibe, like a cozy magazine spread. Different furniture, different curtains, different little knickknacks. Even the lighting felt softer, almost golden. And the weirdest part? I wasn't on the couch anymore. I was sitting in this mustard yellow armchair across the room, like someone had picked me up and placed me there. My legs were folded under me, tucked in the way you sit when you're comfortable, except I definitely hadn't been sitting like that before. I remember this sick, crawling feeling of violation. Like, who moved me? Who put me here? I stood up fast and walked toward the kitchen, and it was different too. Cleaner, prettier, like someone actually cared about it. There was a pot on the stove with soup gently simmering, this soft little bubbling sound like someone was mid-dinner prep. The back door was open, and there was a screen door in place, letting in this cool breeze. I could hear a couple cars passing outside and birds calling, like it was a normal day in a normal neighborhood. But I didn't feel normal. I felt like I was trespassing. Then I heard something from the bathroom, a small clink, like someone setting down a bottle or a rag. And I saw a shadow move under the door, someone inside, like they were wiping the sink or cleaning. That's when panic hit me full force. I bolted back into the living room because the last thing I wanted was for whoever that was to open the door and see me standing there like some intruder. I kept thinking, this is somebody else's house. I'm not supposed to be here. My brother's room was right off the living room, so I ran to his door and grabbed the knob, desperate for something familiar, desperate for him. And before I could even turn it, the doorknob started shaking. Violently, like someone on the other side was wrenching it back and forth, angry and fast. And I heard Eli's voice right behind the door, yelling, "Stop it, you freak!" I remember shouting back, "Eli, what is happening? What's going on?" The whole door looked charged, like it was humming with energy, like the air around it had thickened. And then came these massive impacts. Boom, boom, boom. So loud it swallowed his voice completely. It sounded like something was slamming into the door from inside the room, like the wood itself was being punched. I freaked out. I ran behind the couch and dropped down into a crouch on the carpet, curling up small. I covered my head and clamped my arms over my ears, trying to shut it all out. My heart was going so hard I thought it might actually hurt me. And then, silence. And I heard Eli say, in this totally normal voice, what are you doing? Why are you hiding back there?" I lifted my head, and I was back. Back in my dad's plain living room, back on the regular couch, back in the chilly morning like nothing had happened. The curtains were the same. The furniture was the same. The whole vibe was my dad's again, bachelor clutter and all. I stood up and I was shaking so hard. I could barely breathe. My lungs felt like they'd been sprinting. Eli just looked at me like I was being dramatic, rolled his eyes, and went back into his room like I'd just interrupted him over nothing. Later, when my hands finally stopped trembling, I asked him what he experienced, and he told me, all annoyed and confused, that he couldn't open the door because the doorknob was shaking so hard he couldn't get a grip on it. And to this day, I don't know what happened. I just know that for a few minutes, it felt like I slipped into somebody else's life, somebody else's house, and whatever was on the other side of that door did not want me there. So, let me tell you about the house we moved into. It was late summer 2021 when my family and I finally hauled our lives into this place, an old home tucked in a sleepy little village where the roads feel like they forget you on purpose. You know the kind of place, quiet in a way that's almost too quiet. On move-in day, we did the usual wandering around with boxes thing, trying to get a feel for everything. And that's when we got to the garage. The previous owners had always kept it locked whenever we came to view the property. They'd apparently used it as a play space, so it was off limits. We didn't think much of it at the time, until we opened it. The garage was 2 stories. The first level looked normal enough. Dusty shelves, old hooks on the walls, that faint smell of oil and cold concrete. Typical garage vibes. But upstairs? Upstairs felt wrong. The second floor had these smeared handprints all over the walls, except they weren't little kid handprints. They were big, like full-grown adult hands. And there were shoe scuffs across the floor, heavy and uneven, like someone had been pacing up there in work boots. We stood there for a minute, staring, trying to make it make sense. And eventually we did what people always do when something doesn't fit. We shrugged and told ourselves it must have been from years ago. maybe before it became a kid's play area. Old house, old marks, whatever. Except, it didn't stay whatever for long. About a month later, weird things started happening at night. At first, it was small stuff, things you can easily blame on someone else without even thinking. A door closing a little too hard, the television turning itself on and off, footsteps in the hallway when everyone was supposed to be asleep. And I kept telling myself it was my sister, Lena, or my dad, Mark, because both of them are the type to randomly wake up at 2 a.m. like it's a normal hobby. Then one night, I got up to use the bathroom. The house was dark, that kind of dark where you're half asleep and your brain starts filling in shapes that aren't there. I was in the bathroom when I heard my bedroom TV click on, clear as day, and then my door slam. Like a real slam, the kind that shakes the frame. I finished up fast and walked back to my room, already annoyed, already ready to hiss, "Lena, seriously?" The second I stepped through the doorway, the TV turned off. Just dead, silent, like it had never been on. I stood there for a second, blinking, trying to force logic onto it. Power glitch, loose connection, maybe a draft caught the door. Sure, fine. So I got back into bed and rolled onto my side, facing the wall, trying to settle my heart down. And I swear to you, no exaggeration, no dramatic retelling, I felt the mattress sink beside me. Not like a little bounce, not like the house settling, like someone sat down. Then I heard this slow, tired sigh, right next to me. My whole body went cold. That instant electric fear that makes you feel like you've forgotten how to breathe. I didn't even think. I just bolted upright and basically launched myself out of the room to go find my sister, because the only thing my brain could grab onto was, please let it be Lena messing with me. And as I'm stepping into the hallway, I see my dad leaving my parents' room. He looks at me, pale, wide-eyed, and before I can even speak, he goes, "Did you just feel the bed move?" And then he tells me, calm voice but shaky, he felt the exact same thing. Mattress dipping, a presence, a sigh, like someone had sat down right beside him too. That was the moment it stopped being weird noises and became something else entirely. After that, it kept happening. Not every night, but often enough that we couldn't pretend it was nothing. Sometimes we'd hear sighing, loud, clear, like it was right inside the room with you. Once or twice it sounded like soft laughing, not cheerful laughing either. More like someone amused or mocking, like they were reacting to us. And the worst part is how normal everything would look in the daylight. Sun through the windows, kettle boiling, everyone acting like a regular family. But at night? At night, it felt like the house had a second set of lungs. Eventually, I started digging into the property's history. I figured if the village was as old as it felt, there had to be a story underneath it. Old deeds, old records, anything I could find. And what I found made my stomach flip. Years ago, way back during World War I, the house and the surrounding land had been used as a temporary holding site for German prisoners of war. Not just, someone stayed here once, history. Real, heavy history. The kind that sinks into wood and stone and doesn't fully leave. So yeah, call it whatever you want. But after everything we experienced, after hearing the sighs, feeling the mattress dip, watching doors move on their own, it stopped feeling like a bunch of coincidences. It felt like we weren't alone in that house. And honestly, even now, we still get freaked out. We've learned to laugh about it sometimes because what else can you do? But every once in a while, when the hallway creaks at the wrong time or the air feels just a little too cold, you remember that the house has a past, and sometimes it acts like it remembers it too. So, this happened a lot of summers ago, back when I was around 9 or 10, and my little sister was maybe 7. I'm in my 30s now, but I swear I can still see it like it's right in front of me. It was one of those ordinary summer evenings where nothing exciting is going on. Just dinner on the table, everyone tired in that warm weather way. And then the phone rang mid-meal, which already felt dramatic, you know? It was my mom's youngest sister, Aunt Renee, and she was all keyed up because she'd been looking at a possible investment property not far from where we lived. She wanted my mom to come by after dinner and give her opinion, like, "Do you think this place is worth it?" My mom loved that kind of thing. She was instantly interested. And here's a detail that mattered. My mom's other sister, Aunt Valerie, happened to be over too. She visited constantly back then. So it became this whole little family field trip without anyone even meaning it to. We all crammed into my mom's minivan after dinner and drove maybe 10 or 15 minutes to the address. The light was starting to soften. Late sun, long shadows, that golden kind of glow that makes everything look calm. When we pulled up, it looked like a tidy, older bungalow, like late 70s or early 80s style. A couple big front windows, a front door with a few steps up, and a clean "for sale" sign planted right in the yard. Nothing about it looked creepy. If anything, it looked cared for. Aunt Renee had mentioned there was a really nice garden out back. Apparently the realtor had talked it up, so the grown-ups were immediately focused on that. They got out and started circling around toward the backyard like they were inspectors or something, pointing at things, talking about potential and curb appeal. My sister, Maddie, and I, being kids, were like, "Perfect, this is our moment." We peeled off and ran to the front of the house instead, because of course we did. And I'll be honest, I was feeling mischievous. I sprinted up the steps and started ringing the doorbell, more than once, like rapid fire. Because we'd been told the place was vacant, and in my kid brain that meant it was basically a harmless prank. Maddie was giggling behind me. I was laughing too, and then I happened to glance sideways, through those sheer, old-fashioned lace curtains, like the kind you'd see in a house from another decade. I saw someone standing right at the edge of the window. An old man. He had white hair and this straw hat on, like a cowboy hat, worn soft from use. He was dressed in faded work clothes, like old coveralls with a plaid shirt underneath. And he wasn't looking at me. He wasn't reacting at all. He was just staring out. Not even angry, not startled, just empty, heavy. What hit me wasn't fear at first. It was the sadness in his face. His eyes looked like they were waiting for something that wasn't coming. Like he was listening for someone to pull into the driveway. Like part of him still believed someone would open that door and walk in. It was such a specific kind of expression that even as a kid, I felt it in my stomach. I froze for half a second, then my whole body snapped into panic. I bolted down the steps, grabbed Maddie, and we ran straight around to the backyard, talking over each other like, "There's someone inside. There's an old man in there. The house isn't empty." My mom and aunts immediately went from casual to alarmed, and all four of us hustled back to the front. We stopped outside the gate, kind of hovering there like we didn't know whether to leave or to apologize. But he didn't. No door opened, no footsteps, no voice. Nothing. Just silence. After a minute or two, we got back in the minivan, all of us talking at once. My mom and aunts half embarrassed, half unsure, and my sister and I insisting, "No, we saw him. We really did." Later that night, back home, my mom called Aunt Renee to give her thoughts. She told her the place seemed solid, and this part always sticks with me. She mentioned the backyard garden again, saying it would be a huge bonus for tenants because it looked so well kept and loved. And right before she hung up, my mom added, kind of carefully, "But I don't think the house is empty. the owner might still be living there. There was this pause on the other end, and Aunt Renee said something like, "That doesn't make sense." Because according to the realtor, the story was that the homeowner had listed it to downsize after her husband, who'd lived there for years, had recently passed away. In that house. And when my mom repeated what Maddie and I had seen, the man behind the curtains, Aunt Renee went quiet again. She never bought the place in the end. And I don't know what I believe, honestly. I just know what I saw. That lace curtain, that stillness, that face that looked like it was waiting for a life that had already moved on. And even now, thinking about it, it doesn't scare me as much as it makes me sad. So before I tell you what's been going on, I want you to know where I'm coming from. I've always had this quiet interest in paranormal stuff. Like, I'll watch the videos, read the stories, get that little chill down my spine. But I'm not the type to swear a place is haunted just because a floorboard creaks. I'm usually the person who goes, okay, what's the normal explanation here? Because honestly, I've never had anything happen to me that felt truly undeniable. Until the last couple months. It started small. I'd be at home, sitting at my desk, gaming or just scrolling, headphones on, the kind that make the whole world go muffled. And out of nowhere, I'd get this heavy, unmistakable feeling. Like someone was behind me. Like I'd turn my head and catch somebody staring, except there was never anybody there. Sometimes it would hit and fade in a few minutes. Other times it would hang around for what felt like forever, like my body had decided to stay on alert for no reason. And I kept telling myself, you're tired, you're stressed, it's anxiety, your brain is misfiring. But then my cats started doing things that made it harder to brush off. I have 2 of them, Miso and Juniper, and they're not usually jumpy. But every so often, they'd suddenly bolt like something spooked them. Like full-on panic, backs arched, tails puffed up, and then they'd vanish under the bed or behind the couch. And I'd be standing there like, what? What did you see? But there'd be nothing. No loud noise, no knocked-over object, no stray shadow I could blame it on. Again, I tried to stay reasonable. Cats are weird. Maybe they heard something I couldn't. Maybe a pipe clanged. Maybe a neighbor shut a door. Maybe. And then there was the sleep thing. I've always been a light sleeper, but lately I've been waking up way more than normal, like my eyes snap open for no good reason. What freaked me out is that it kept happening around the same times, night after night, like my body was on some eerie schedule. I'd check my phone and just stare at the clock thinking, why am I awake right now? Still, all of that could be stress. All of that could be my mind building a story out of nothing. But a few nights ago, this is the part that really got under my skin. I was at my computer after work, same routine as always. It was about 10:15 p.m., already fully dark outside. The apartment is small, so everything is close together, and their hook is this narrow spiral staircase near the front area that leads down toward the entrance. All of a sudden, both cats froze. Not in a casual way either. They went rigid and stared in the exact same direction, toward that staircase, like they were watching something move. Their ears went flat, and I saw that puffed tail fear starting up again. They looked locked in, like whatever had their attention was real enough to keep them from even blinking. And that's when I noticed it. The front door was open. Not wide open, just partially, like it had been pulled inward and left there. Enough to see the dark gap, enough to feel that immediate drop in your stomach. I swear, my whole body went cold. I got up so fast my chair practically skidded. I went down the stairs and checked the doorway, then stepped out and looked around. Nothing. But it was quiet. Empty. Like the place had been holding its breath. I went back inside and checked everything. Windows, locks, the whole routine. And the entire time, my brain kept flipping between two thoughts. Okay, calm down. The door didn't latch. You didn't close it all the way. Maybe there was a draft. And then, but why did the cats react like that? Why at the exact moment the door was open? Why does this keep happening now, when it never used to? Because that's the thing. None of this, none of it, was happening before. Not the someone's behind me feeling. Not the cats freaking out like that. Not the constant wake-ups at night. It all started only recently, like something shifted a couple months ago, and now my brain can't settle. So I'm telling you all of this because I genuinely don't know what to make of it. Do you think I'm just getting in my own head? Like subconsciously scaring myself and connecting dots that aren't really connected? Or does this sound like the kind of situation where something is actually off? Okay, so I need you to picture this place with me. It's a restaurant now, but it used to be a house. One of those original, creaky old homes from the 1800s that somehow survived long enough to get repurposed. High ceilings, narrow stairs, weird corners that don't make sense unless you remember it was built for a family, not for a dining room and a bar. And listen, I'm not someone who wants this to be a ghost story. I've worked in restaurants forever. Like, I've been in the service industry for well over a decade, and I've seen all kinds of chaos. Busy nights, drunk customers, equipment breaking, things falling because someone stacked them wrong. All of that is normal. But this place has its own brand of what the hell. At first, it was little stuff. Forks sliding off tables. A glass tipping over when nobody even brushed it. Bottles taking a dive off a shelf. And I tried so hard to be rational about it. You know, like, okay, old building, slightly uneven floors, heavy trucks going by. Easy explanations, except the way some things move. It doesn't feel like gravity. It feels like something shoved it, like a quick, annoyed little push. Then it started getting weirder. I'll be downstairs and swear I hear someone upstairs, like footsteps or a voice, or that muffled sound of someone shifting a chair. I'll call out, expecting my coworker to answer, and then nothing. I'll go up there and it's empty. A couple times I've even had that split-second moment where I see someone walk into the storage room or the office, like fully convinced it was my coworker, like I'm about to follow them in. And then they're just not there. No door closing. No, oh hey. Nothing. Just me standing there feeling ridiculous. So here's the thing. I don't tell new hires about any of this. I know that sounds mean, but it's honestly the only way I can test whether I'm just feeding people ideas. Because if I say, this place is creepy, then every creak becomes a presence, right? So I keep my mouth shut. I act normal. I let them train. Give it a couple weeks, sometimes less. Someone will casually bring it up like they're trying not to sound crazy. Like Mara, one of our newer servers, came up to me after a lunch shift and said, really quietly, "Okay, I'm not trying to be weird, but do things ever, like, move on their own here?" And my stomach just dropped because I hadn't told her anything. Another guy, Devin, asked me if we had some kind of prank thing going because he watched a spoon flip off a table like somebody had flicked it. He even tried recreating it, bumping the table, shifting his weight, tapping the edge, and couldn't get it to do anything close to what he saw. And it's not just staff. Customers have had stuff happen too. People laughing nervously because their utensils slid right off the table while they were mid-conversation. One couple insisted a menu moved, not fell, not slid down from condensation, moved like it was tugged. Now, I'm a pretty grounded person. I don't drink, I don't mess with drugs, I don't have any family history of anything that would explain hallucinations. And I've worked in enough places to know when my brain is just tired and filling in gaps. Which is why the moment I'm about to tell you still makes my skin crawl. It was quiet, totally normal. And right as I'm turning the key, I hear a young woman's voice say my name. Not in that vague, did I imagine that way? I mean right by my ear, clear as day, like someone leaned in close to get my attention. But at the same time it sounded distant? Like it came from too near and too far at once. And she said it like a question. Like, Elena? That little upward inflection, like she was checking if it was me. I froze so hard I swear my whole body locked up. Because my name isn't super common. It's not the kind of thing you overhear casually shouted on a random street. And there was no one in the alley. No one behind me. No one passing through. Nothing. I actually turned around expecting to see someone, like maybe a friend of a coworker, or a delivery person, or even just some stranger who happened to know me. But there was nobody. And that's the part that sticks with me. Not just the voice, but how personal it felt. Like whoever it was wasn't yelling into space. They were talking to me. I've been there a little over 3 years now, and I'll be honest, it makes me uncomfortable in this deep, quiet way that doesn't really go away. Sometimes I catch myself wondering things I don't even want to wonder. Like, if this house has a history, if someone young lived there and got trapped in a bad life, if something happened to her, if she was lonely, if she's just still there. And then I swing the other direction and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm stressed. Maybe I'm overtired. Maybe my brain glitched for half a second. But I keep coming back to the same thing. I've worked in a lot of places. I've had long nights. I've been exhausted, burned out, running on fumes, and I have never had this kind of stuff follow me the way it does here. So I don't know what it is. I just know that when I'm alone by that side door, keys in hand, and the alley goes quiet, I find myself listening harder than I want to, just in case she says my name again. Hey, okay. So I'm gonna tell you something that still makes my stomach drop a little when I think about it. I found an old post I wrote years ago about this, back when I was younger and honestly way more jumpy, and I thought, surely by now I'll have a normal explanation. But reading it again, I still don't. And what's strange is, I'm not someone who grew up believing in ghosts or demons or anything religious like that. I'm not trying to convince you of some big supernatural theory. I'm just telling you what happened, the way it felt in my body, and why it stuck with me. When I was a kid, I had this weird awareness. Like when I was maybe 7 or 8, I'd know my parents were coming up the steps before they actually did. Not because I heard them, more like I'd picture it in my head, and then a few seconds later, there they were. And I was freakishly good at guessing things. Not in a smart kid way, just knowing. Like, pick a number, and I'd get it right so often it stopped being fun for other people. That kind of thing faded as I got older. But then, around the time I was 10, I had my first proper nope moment. The kind you don't laugh off. It was winter, so it got dark early. Like, you'd swear it was nighttime by 5. My parents, Niall and Orla, had gone out for a couple of hours, and I was home alone, absolutely glued to my phone like a little goblin with a new toy. And the sitting room layout matters here, so just picture it with me. Long, narrow room, open plan into the kitchen at one end. Along one wall, there's this run of tall, skinny cupboards, mostly boring storage stuff. And around the far end, there's a corner that leads into this short hallway that goes to the older part of the house. The old house section. High ceilings, cold corners, that kind of vibe. One cupboard door was ajar. Not wide open, just open enough to make a weird angle. I was slouched sideways on the couch with my legs stretched out, so I couldn't really see past that cupboard into the hallway. And then I got this feeling. You know that sensation when you're a kid and you've done something wrong and you don't even remember what it is yet, but you just know you're about to be caught? Like the air goes tight? That. It hit me out of nowhere. My chest went hot, my stomach went hollow, and the room felt smaller, like it was leaning in. The second I looked up from my phone, literally the moment my eyes left the screen, the cupboard door slammed shut. Not drifted, not clicked, slapped shut like someone had thrown it. The sound echoed through the whole house. And I remember just freezing there because the force of it made no sense. All the windows were shut. No wind, no draft. And if someone had pushed it, they would have been standing exactly where I couldn't see, right around that corner in the dark hallway. The place I'd been instinctively afraid to look at in the first place. I didn't even scream. I just sat there, heart hammering, trying to convince myself I'd imagined the whole thing. But I hadn't. I saw it. I heard it. The sound was too real. Then there was another one. This happened not long after, when I was around 9. My little sister, let's call her Erin, and I shared a room back then. We had these loft beds, the kind that are up high with a ladder in the middle. Her bed was above the window. Mine was closer to the door. From the doorway, you could see her bed easily, but you couldn't see into mine unless you stepped in and looked up. So I went into the bedroom and... This is the detail that still gives me chills. She wasn't in her bed. I couldn't see her anywhere from the doorway, which meant she must have been in my loft, because that was the one hidden from view. I walked to the ladder and asked, "What's wrong? Why did you call me?" And Erin goes, really serious, "You called me." I remember saying, "What?" like an idiot, because my brain just couldn't process it. She insisted she heard my voice, clear as day, telling her to come down the ladder. Not whispering, not like a noise that could be mistaken, like me saying it. And I felt something in my whole body go cold, because I'd been in the sitting room. I hadn't been anywhere near her. But she was getting worked up, so I did the only thing I could think of. I lied. I smiled and acted like I'd been messing with her, like it was a prank. I needed her out of that room, off that ladder, and out into the hallway where it felt safer. I don't know why I felt that so strongly, but I did. I got her down, shut the bedroom door behind us, and then I asked her what she heard again, exact words. She said my voice told her to come downstairs. We used to call the loft upstairs and the floor downstairs, like our own little language. She said she asked, "Why?" and "What do you want?" And when she didn't get an answer, that's when she called my name. And then I walked in from the hall. To this day, she still thinks I was messing with her. I've never been able to explain why that voice wanted her to climb down, or why it chose to sound like me. I just know I didn't like it. I didn't like the intent behind it. And then, there's the last one. The one that made me stop calling this stuff weird and start calling it real. It was summer. We were on holiday in the West, still in Ireland, but not where we normally stay. Somewhere outside a small town near the edge of woodland. I think it was County Mayo, but honestly it all blurs together now. What I remember is the house and the way the dark looked outside it. It was us, me, Erin, our parents, and our 2 dogs. The rental house was beside a bigger one where a family lived full-time, and they had this massive dog. The back of our place faced a garden that ran right up toward trees. Past the garden was forest, thick enough that the night looked like a wall. Aaron and I slept on a pull-out sofa bed in the living room. The sofa faced a big window, straight out to the garden and the woods. Our parents were in the one bedroom at the front. It was around midnight. I was on my phone with the brightness turned down, scrolling videos, half listening to the quiet. The kind of quiet you only get outside towns, where there's no traffic hum, just space. Then I heard something. Far away at first, deep in the woods. It didn't sound like a fox. It didn't sound like an owl. It didn't sound like any clean, natural animal call. It was like a woman moaning and an animal crying at the same time. Like something wounded. Like something trying to sound wounded. The first time, I tried to be sensible. Okay, I thought. Someone's dog, maybe. Or a deer. Something weird but normal. Then it happened again. Closer. And I can't even explain the dread that hit me, because it wasn't just, I'm scared because it's a scary noise. It was like my nervous system recognized it before my brain did. My skin went prickly. My throat tightened. It felt like my body was preparing to run, but there was nowhere to run to. I nudged Aaron and whispered, "Can you hear that?" And then it came again, closer still. The sound moved like it had direction, like it was coming toward us. That's the part that makes it hard to dismiss, you know? If it was just a random animal calling, it would have stayed in one place, or wandered, or faded. This didn't. It would cry out, and then cry out again, and every time it did, it was nearer. Within minutes, it wasn't deep in the woods anymore. It was in the garden. And then, it was right outside the window. Maybe 3 meters away, 10 feet, just on the other side of glass. I started crying without even meaning to. Silent tears, the kind where you're trying not to make noise because you don't want whatever it is to know you're awake. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I remember pressing my thumb into my palm like it could anchor me. The sound up close wasn't clearer. It was wronger. It had this strained, almost deliberate quality, like something imitating pain, like it had learned the shape of a human wail but didn't have the right mouth for it. There was a rough, scratchy edge, almost like static, like the sound was tearing at itself. And then it let out a shriek that I swear I'd only ever heard in horror films. Not a quick yelp, not a bark, a long, heart-stopping scream that made my chest seize like I'd been punched. The thing is, our dogs didn't bark, not even a low warning. The neighbor's huge dog didn't bark. Aaron didn't really wake up. It was like the whole world stayed unnaturally still except for that sound. And I just lay there, staring at the dark window, feeling like something was choosing to be heard by me, like it wanted the fear, like it wanted me to know it was there. After it stopped, the silence felt even worse, like the quiet was listening. Erin has no memory of any of it. She'll blink at me when I bring it up and act like I'm talking about a dream. But I wasn't asleep. I know the difference. I was wide awake, crying, shaking, fully conscious, counting seconds between each scream like that would somehow make it logical. And even now, years later, that's the part I can't make peace with. It wasn't just a sound that scared me. It was the feeling that came with it. That dread that hit instantly, before I even had time to think. Like something in me recognized something in it. I don't know what it was. I'm not saying it was a banshee or some mythological thing. I'm not trying to dress it up. I just know it came from the woods. It moved closer in a straight line. It stopped right outside the window, and it screamed like it wanted to peel the fear right out of my chest. And I know this. If I ever hear it again, if I ever hear that sound moving toward me in the dark, I won't be able to pretend I'm imagining it. Not for a second. Hey, yeah. I'm sorry if this comes out messy. I'm trying to sound calm, but honestly, I feel like I'm right on the edge of losing it, and I just need to tell someone who will actually listen. So, context. I'm Ethan, I'm 36, married, no kids. My wife, Nadia, and I grew up in different religious backgrounds, and I need you to understand. I used to be the guy who rolled his eyes at anything paranormal. Ghosts, spirits, witchcraft. My brain filed all of that under movies and superstition. Except, we lived in a house that changed that. It wasn't ancient or anything, maybe built in the late 80s, but it had this weight to it. At first it was subtle. Nadia started saying she felt uneasy there. Not, I don't like the paint color, uneasy. More like, I don't feel safe turning my back to the hallway, uneasy. Then the weird stuff started stacking up. She'd hear footsteps on the stairs when she was home alone, more than once, like someone pacing, slow and deliberate. She started having nightmares, really vivid, disturbing ones. She told me she'd wake up feeling like someone was breathing right next to her, on the side of the bed where I wasn't. And then there was this one thing she said that made my skin crawl. In her dream, we'd be intimate, and halfway through, my face would shift. Like it wasn't me anymore, like something was wearing me. She'd wake up furious at me, like I'd betrayed her in real life. And I'd be standing there going, "What are you talking about? I was asleep." I tried to rationalize it. Stress, sleep paralysis, anxiety, anything. But then her brother, Malik, came over one night, and later he told us he saw a dark figure near the staircase. He's not dramatic. He's not a prankster. He looked genuinely shaken. And the same day, our dog, usually the friendliest, dumbest little ball of joy, refused to come inside, like planted his paws and pulled back, trembling. I had to carry him in, and even then he fought me like the house was a burning building. Not long after that, Nadia got sick. Really sick. Severe vertigo that dragged on for months. She couldn't function without medication. Some days she could barely sit up without the room spinning. I watched my wife turn into someone exhausted and scared, and I still kept telling myself, this can't be the house. And then one day she said something that hit me hard. She said, "Do you smell that? It's like something rotten." I smelled nothing, not even a hint, but she kept insisting it was everywhere, especially near certain rooms. And here's the thing, I'm a horror movie addict. I know what the only one person can smell it trope is. That's usually when you're supposed to start praying or running. We stayed with my parents for a few days just to get her out of there. And with their help, we found a woman, someone people described as a spiritual healer, a medium, whatever you want to call it. She came to the house. Didn't even hesitate. She told us it felt occupied, heavy, like something had attached itself. She did a cleansing, prayers, incense, the whole thing. And then she prayed over Nadia and me. And I swear to you, right after that, Nadia's vertigo eased, like someone turned off a switch. Within hours, she was moving around like herself again. The next day, she was cleaning the house, wiping counters, opening windows, like she hadn't spent months struggling to stand. I just stood there, stunned. Because what do you do with that? Where do you put it in your brain? For a while, it actually felt normal. Then slowly, little things came back. Nadia started having nightmares again. And then this streak of bad luck hit her hard. She lost a job she'd had for nearly a decade. She found another one quickly, but it turned toxic fast, and she was pushed out. Long story, but basically office politics and someone with power who decided they didn't like her. She's been unemployed for about a year now, and it's crushed her confidence. Around that same time, she started saying she felt a presence in the new house. Not seeing anything, just that feeling of being watched, like the air behind you is occupied. And both of us, we were drained, constantly, like our batteries couldn't charge. I started skipping work. I used all my leave and then some. I'd come home and collapse like I'd been hauling bricks all day, even when I'd barely done anything. Then one day we found something on our gate, red candle wax smeared near the lock, and nearby, little bits of stuff that looked intentional, like someone left it there on purpose. Not trash, not random, more like a message. It happened again later. Candles again, signs of someone doing something right outside our place. That's when we had this moment of, okay, we've been coasting spiritually. Because for a long time we weren't really practicing either of our religions consistently. Life got busy, then stressful, then heavy, and prayer became this thing we did someday. So we decided to stop drifting. We did house blessing prayers, kind of a housewarming ritual, but spiritual. And after that, the atmosphere genuinely felt lighter, like the air could breathe again. We started praying every single day. No breaks, no excuses. We also installed cameras outside, and that created a problem with our neighbors. They accused us of recording into their yard, which we weren't. But the relationship turned sour almost overnight. And that was strange because before that we'd been friendly. Barbecues, little outings, casual chats. Suddenly it was cold looks and silence. For a few months things felt steadier. Not perfect, but better. And then, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, it shifted again. Nadia's nightmares returned. Not just occasional bad dreams, the kind where she wakes up tense and afraid, like she's been running for her life. Malik started having nightmares too, about us. He's always been kind of sensitive, like he picks up on moods and energy more than most people. He told us he dreamed that Nadia and I were in trouble, that people, or something, was trying to split us apart. Nadia started feeling that presence again. So last November, Malik took us to see an Anglican priest. We sat in this quiet church office and tried to explain everything without sounding insane. The priest listened carefully and then said something that made my stomach drop. He believed something sexual and parasitic might be involved. He used the words incubus and succubus. He said sometimes things attach themselves through fear, trauma, obsession, vulnerability, and they feed on conflict and intimacy. He prayed over us, and when I say prayed, I mean it felt intense, like a spiritual intervention. Malik later told me that during the prayers, he heard a low growl behind us, and that the priest actually glanced toward the sound like he'd noticed it too. Nadia felt better afterward, but only for a few weeks. And ever since then, intimacy has been complicated. Not just emotionally, like physically blocked. Here's what's happening now, and this is where I start to feel really scared. Nadia struggles to fall asleep, and when she does, she has nightmares constantly. Last week, we finally had a quiet moment where it felt like, okay, tonight. And I got sick out of nowhere. This weekend, we tried again. Saturday night, Nadia's stomach turned. Then the next night, she got this intense pain running through her arms and shoulders, like her body was warning her. And I know how this sounds, but it genuinely feels like there's an invisible wall between us, like something doesn't want us close. We've started fighting over nothing again. Little comments turn into arguments. We'll look back after and go, why did we even do that? I'm exhausted all the time. No motivation. I drag myself to work, and by the time I'm home, I'm empty. And then this morning, this is the part I haven't even told Nadia yet. I was in the bathroom, getting ready for work, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw something, like a pale, white, shadowy figure, move out of our bedroom. Not a full person, not a clear shape, but definitely not a trick of light. It moved with intention, like it walked. I froze. I stared, and it was gone. I know what denial feels like, I've been living in it for years. This didn't feel like imagination. So now I'm sitting with all these questions that I never thought I'd ask seriously. Did something follow us from the old house? Is this something new? Is someone doing something to us, like actual witchcraft? And I hate even thinking this, but could it be the neighbors? Could it be resentment, jealousy, spite? And then there's this other fear I can't shake. Are couples like us, coming from different religious backgrounds, more vulnerable spiritually? Like, does that create cracks something can slip through? I don't know. I really don't. I just know I'm scared, and I'm tired, and I want my wife to sleep peacefully again. I want our home to feel like ours, and I want to stop feeling like something is sitting just outside the edge of the room, waiting for us to fall apart. Okay, so I want to tell you something that's been true in my family for as long as anyone can remember, especially on my mom's side. For generations, the women in our line have been sensitive. Like, we pick up on energy in a way that isn't just a vibe. It's more like hearing a frequency other people can't hear. Some of us have had dreams that end up being real later. Some of us have seen things. Some of us have had moments where you feel a presence so clearly, it's like someone stepped into the room and never bothered to announce themselves. And I know how that sounds. Trust me, I'm not telling you this lightly. This is just my normal. On paper, it's kind of interesting. My dad's family is from southern Italy, near a town where old stories about folk witches are practically stitched into the culture. And my mom's side is French-Canadian, and they had their own version of light work, herbal remedies, prayer traditions, and quiet rituals that were never called witchcraft out loud, but kind of lived in that same neighborhood. But the real center of all of this, the thing that makes my stomach tighten even when I'm just thinking about it, is my mom's childhood house. It's in a small town in Connecticut, and it's old, built in the early 1900s by immigrant families. From the outside, it looks like a normal, slightly tired house, but inside, it doesn't feel like a house the way other houses do. It feels like a place with layers, like the air has memory, like something about the land is open. And I don't mean open like welcoming. I mean open like a door that never fully shuts. There are crawl spaces, weird little sealed-off corners, a third floor that's basically been left untouched for years because my grandma can't climb up there anymore. And on top of that, this is important, my grandma became a heavy antique collector over the years. It started harmless, like, oh, that's a beautiful old piece. But it slowly turned into something closer to hoarding. Rooms filled with objects, jewelry, old dolls, statues, trinkets from different cultures, things she picked up at fairs, estate sales, flea markets, all with their own history, their own residue. And I really believe objects carry energy. Some things feel neutral. Some things feel warm. Some things feel loud. That house is loud. The other day, I went there with my mom. We ended up going up to the third floor, where everything feels heavier, like the air is thicker. And I remember standing there and having this familiar sensation creep in. That same feeling I used to get as a kid, like someone was just a step behind me. Not touching me, not speaking, just present. And being in that house always puts me in this weird place emotionally, too. It's like the dysfunction in that side of the family gets amplified there. It's disorienting, like your brain can't fully settle. Anyway, there are a handful of moments that sit in my mind like stones. I'll tell you a few, because they're the ones I keep circling back to. The first one started as a dream. When I was little, I had this incredibly vivid dream that my mom's childhood bedroom was completely infested with ladybugs. Not one or two. I mean everywhere, covering the walls, the bedding, the corners. And I could hear the buzzing like it was right next to my ears. It felt so real that when I woke up, I still had that sensation of being in the room. Years later, years, I found out something that made my skin prickle. My mom's room actually had been infested with ladybugs at one point, and that was around the time she said the house was the most active. So then you have my mom and her sister, when they were teenagers, who were so scared in that house that they started sleeping together in the same bedroom, which, ironically, was one of the most active rooms. And look, I know people have all kinds of explanations for things, but when you hear someone tell you a story like that, and you can see the fear still living behind their eyes decades later, it's hard to dismiss. Now here's the part that happened recently. Toward the end of our visit, I started feeling that someone is with us sensation again. Like the temperature in the room changed, like I could feel a tension on me. My grandma wanted to show me this old book that's been in the house forever, and she swears she can't get rid of it. Like she's thrown it away and it shows back up again, back in the house, or somehow in the trash like it never left. The book is disturbing. It's a wartime photo book, graphic images, written like a soldier's perspective. And it's tied, in my grandma's mind, to the first family that lived in the house. There's always been this ugly whisper around that family, like they weren't just some people who lived there, but people who brought something dark with them. And here's the thing, my family is Jewish on one side, Christian on the other. So there's an extra layer of discomfort there that I can't fully put into words. It feels personal in a way I don't want it to. I turned to my grandma, but directly, and asked her, "Are they still here?" And she looked at me like she knew exactly what I meant. And she said, almost under her breath, "He wouldn't dare." The second she said that, I opened the book, and this loose cabinet door nearby just fell off its hinges and hit the floor. Not a slow slip, not a gentle creak, a drop, like something punctuated the moment. I didn't even think. I just looked right at the space I felt it coming from and said out loud, "Do not follow me. You are not welcome." Then, because I don't always make the gentlest choices when I'm trying to confirm what I already know, I asked my grandma if I could step into her bedroom. The second I crossed the threshold, I felt it. Sadness. Heavy, weighted sadness. Not like someone had a bad day sadness, more like grief that's been steeping there for years. And I looked into one corner and I just knew someone was there. Not with my eyes, with that inner sense that goes cold and sharp. I said, "Mom, someone's here." And right after I said it, we heard a plastic bag in the corner crinkle, like a hand grabbed it. And then it slid, slowly, dragging down from where it was resting, like something was pulling it just to let us know it could. All three of us, me, my mom, my grandma, said some version of, "Get out," and the movement stopped. The last story I want to leave you with is from my mom's childhood, and it's almost eerily simple. Her sister had a foil balloon, one of those shiny ones, that was already deflated. It was in that same active bedroom. One day, they were all sitting in the living room with friends, and the balloon just floated out of the bedroom. Not blown by wind, not kicked. It wafted out like it had somewhere to be. My grandma stood up immediately, calm, firm, and said, "All right, everyone, come on. We're stepping outside." She led them to the back door, held the balloon there like it was something she was escorting, and said, clear as day, "You cannot be here. You are not allowed in my house. You need to leave." She opened the door, and the balloon dropped straight down. Just dropped. Like whatever was holding it up let go. So that's what I'm dealing with. And it's not just ghost stories, you know? It's layered. It feels generational. It feels like trauma and pain live in the walls and the objects and the family dynamics all at once. Like everything is tangled together. And I'm not walking into this unprotected. I have my own practices. I've cleansed myself. I know how to ground. I know how to close things off. But I also know I'm going to have to face this more directly one day. When the time comes to clean that house out, when the time comes to decide what stays, what goes, what gets handled carefully. And I don't just want to react. I want to understand what this part of me is and how to approach it without getting pulled under by it. Because I can feel it. That house isn't just haunted. It feels like a doorway somebody left open a long time ago. And I'm trying to figure out what it means to finally, gently, firmly close it. So, I grew up not too far from the Bay Area, and there's this day from when I was a kid that still sticks to me in a way I can't fully explain. I must have been around 11 or 12. My dad, his name was Ray, decided we should take a little day trip. We started near the water up in Benicia, by this ferry landing or dock area. I can't swear it was exactly Benicia, but it was somewhere around there. One of those places where the air smells like salt and metal and old wood. And I remember the sea lions. Not just a couple, a whole noisy crowd of them, barking like they owned the place. It was loud enough that you had to lean in when you talked, and I remember Ray being weirdly cheerful about it, like the chaos was part of the fun. His real goal, though, wasn't the waterfront. He wanted to show me this old historic building that was just a short walk away, something courthouse related. In my memory, it was described as one of the earliest courthouses in California. The building itself had this worn, interesting look to it, like it had stories baked into the walls. At the time, it was operating as a small museum. Inside, it was pretty simple. Old legal books, maybe a gavel or two, brittle-looking documents in glass cases, stuff that felt important but also kind of quiet, like a place that expected you to whisper. It wasn't huge. You could wander through and be done in 10 minutes if you weren't trying to stretch it out. But the part I remember most wasn't even the courthouse. Behind it, off to one side, there was this cabin. The courthouse sat on a tidy little lot, trimmed grass, clean paths, that kind of thing. But the cabin looked like it had been left behind by time. It was surrounded by overgrowth, like the plants were slowly trying to swallow it. There was a waist-high wooden fence around it, faded and rough. I drifted over there while Ray hung back talking with the guide, maybe 15 or 20 yards behind me. I can still picture him, hands in his pockets, nodding like he was genuinely interested. He always did that. He could make any stranger feel like what they were saying mattered. The guide mentioned something about the cabin having housed an important early political figure. If I remember right, she said it was connected to one of the first state senators. I didn't care much at the time. I was a kid. I was just sort of there. I leaned on the fence and stared at the cabin's front door. The door had a screen, like one of those old screen doors that clacks when it closes. The porch sat a little higher than the ground, so the doorway was elevated above where I stood. And while I was staring, someone stepped into view behind the screen. An older woman. I only saw her from about the chest up, but everything about her looked wrong in a very specific way. Not scary movie wrong, just off. Her clothing looked old-fashioned, like something out of a pioneer show. Not costumey exactly, just dated. And the light around her, or maybe the dimness inside the cabin, made her look kind of gray, like the color had been drained out of her. But the thing that really got me was the way she looked at me. She lifted her chin and stared down over her nose, like I'd interrupted her. It wasn't curious. It wasn't friendly. It felt sharp, almost like being sized up. And I remember this clear, instinctive thought in my kid brain. Why is she looking at me like that? I did what kids do when something doesn't make sense. I looked for an adult to confirm reality. I turned my head and called out to the guide. I didn't shout, but I spoke loud enough to be heard. Are there supposed to be people in there? And I swear to you, the moment she said it, I turned back, ready to point, ready to say, then who is that? And the woman was gone. Just gone. No movement, no sound, no door opening, no footsteps on the porch. 1 second she was there behind the screen, looking down at me like I didn't belong. And the next second, there was nothing but a dark, empty doorway. I didn't tell anyone, not that day. Partly because I didn't want to sound dumb, partly because the feeling it gave me was so strange I didn't even know how to put it into words. And partly because I think some part of me was afraid that if I said it out loud, it would become more real. Years later, I asked Ray about that trip, just casually like, hey, do you remember that old courthouse museum we went to? The one with the cabin behind it? And he didn't. Not even a little. That's what bothers me sometimes, how vivid it is for me, and how completely it slid off his memory like it never happened. Every now and then I'll do a quick search, poke around online, try to figure out exactly where we were. I've never done a full deep dive, but I've tried enough to realize my memory is fuzzy on the details. Waterfront town north of the bay, an early courthouse museum, a cabin behind it, sea lions raising hell nearby. And honestly, I still feel curious, not in a dramatic way, just in this quiet, human way. Like, I'd love to find the place again, stand by that fence, look at that screen door, and find out if anyone else ever saw a woman in there too. Okay, so I've kind of always been the spirit-sensitive one in my family, you know? Like, I'm the one who notices weird vibes, gets a gut feeling, believes there's something beyond what we can see. And that's not really the vibe in my house. We're Christian, we pray, we do the whole church thing. But my family is very much that's your imagination whenever I bring anything up. I've lived in the same house since I was about 6. I'm 19 now, and between maybe 9 and 13, that house did some things to me. Not a creaky floorboard things, like real moments that still make my stomach drop when I think about them. There are 2 nights that stand out so clearly, it's like my body remembers them before my brain even catches up. The first one happened when I was around 10. My parents and my little brother, Miles, were in my parents' bedroom upstairs, just hanging out. I remember feeling thirsty, so I went down to the kitchen to grab a bottle of water. And I need you to understand something about me. I have always hated the dark. Not a cute, ooh, spooky hate. Like, my skin crawls, my heart races, I feel wrong in it. So whenever I'm downstairs at night, I turn off the light and I basically sprint back up the stairs like the darkness is chasing me. Normally, I'd flip the downstairs light from the top of the stairs before I went down, because there's a switch that makes it easier. But for some reason that night, I didn't. I don't know why, I just didn't. So I went down, got the water, and when I started back up, the whole downstairs was pitch black. By the time I reached the landing and headed toward my parents' room, my fear had already started rising. I could feel it in my chest, like that tight, buzzing panic. And then, when I grabbed the doorknob to my parents' room, it wouldn't open. Like the knob turned weird, like it was jammed, like someone on the other side was holding it, or it was stuck in a way it shouldn't be. I tried again, harder, nothing. And the darker it felt around me, the more my brain went, okay, they're messing with you. It's a prank. They're trying to scare you. So I started whisper yelling, like, stop, open the door. And then I started shaking the handle, actually getting angry. But right when I was at that point where panic turns into full body shaking, I heard a laugh. Not from inside the room, not down the hall, right in my ear. Like someone leaned in and laughed beside my head. This low, ugly, satisfied kind of laugh that made my whole body lock up. I swear to you, I went completely still. I couldn't even breathe for a second. Then I shoved the door with both hands, like pure instinct, and it swung open immediately. Smooth, easy, like it had never been stuck at all. I stumbled into the bedroom like I'd been chased. My parents and Miles looked up at me like I was being dramatic, and I was like, "Who did that? Why did you hold the door?" And they all just stared. My mom was like, "What are you talking about?" My dad was like, "We didn't even hear you. Why did you take so long?" And the thing is, they weren't acting. They weren't hiding smiles. They weren't doing that "we got you" thing. They genuinely had no idea what I meant. That was the first time I ever thought, okay, maybe I'm not crazy, and maybe something is actually happening in this house. But every time I said anything, it got brushed off. It's the house settling. You're overthinking. You have a big imagination. And honestly, after a while, I started trying to believe them. Especially because my brain is busy all the time. I have ADHD, and sometimes it's like my mind generates extra noise, thoughts, echoes, random sounds that feel almost real. So I'd tell myself, "You're probably mixing things up. You're fine." Then came the second night. This one was later. Maybe I was 12 or 13. It was nighttime again, and for some reason, I decided to change my clothes downstairs in the living room. I don't even know why I chose there. It was one of those decisions that makes no sense later, but at the time, I didn't think anything of it. The layout downstairs is kind of open. The living room connects to the dining area, and that connects into part of the kitchen, like one long rectangle that's split into 3 spaces. Each space has its own light though, so if the living room light is on, you can sort of see into the dining room, but the kitchen stays shadowy unless you turn its light on too. So I'm in the living room, changing, and I hear this sound. At first it's subtle, like I'm not sure if it's real. It's a deep, slow, heavy breathing sound, like someone breathing through their mouth on purpose, like they're standing still and just pulling air in and out loudly. I froze with my shirt half on, and I remember thinking, nope, brain noise, not real. So I tried the trick I always used. I started focusing on something else. I think I even hummed a little song to myself, like, okay, ignore it and it'll go away. But it didn't go away. So I covered my ears with my hands, and the breathing got muffled, meaning it was real. My heart dropped. I turned toward the kitchen, but from where I stood, it was mostly dark. I couldn't see much. The living room light lit part of the dining room, but the kitchen was this black patch beyond it. So I stepped into the dining room, slow, trying to be brave, trying to convince myself it was nothing. And from there, I could see more. Not clearly, just enough. And that's when I saw it. A silhouette, a man-shaped figure, not like a shadow from furniture, like a person's outline. Standing, or kind of rocking, like he was shifting his weight back and forth, almost pacing in place, but not walking anywhere. Just moving like he couldn't stay still. And the breathing was coming from him. That's what wrecked me the most. The fact that the sound matched the shape. Like it wasn't random noise anymore. It had a source. I didn't scream. I didn't call out. I didn't even think. I just ran. I bolted up the stairs so fast I almost tripped, and I slammed my bedroom door like that could protect me from whatever I'd just seen. When I told my family, nobody believed me. Not even a little. They treated it like I'd watched something scary and freaked myself out. But I know what I saw. And ever since then, nothing that intense has happened again. But the smaller things still pop up sometimes. Little moments where the house feels too aware, too present, like it's listening. Hello everyone, how was your day? I'm really happy to finally sit down with my microphone after a long day and share some of my mysterious experiences with you. Even better, they might help you fall asleep a little easier. So, have you subscribed to the channel and turned on notifications yet? Don't wait any longer. Thank you so much for all your continued love and support for the Paranormal M channel. Now, let's dive into today's stories. So, for a long stretch of my life, my job was basically the road. I traveled full-time, like 100% travel, for close to 20 years. Always during the day, always logging long hours. And a lot of it was on those empty interstate runs where you can go 15 or 20 minutes without seeing another soul. And I should tell you up front, I'm not a casual driver. I'm one of those people who's always been defensive, maybe overly so. I'm in my late 50s now, and I've been driving this way for as long as I can remember. My mirrors are set correctly, the way safety instructors recommend, so they show what's actually beside me, not the side of my own car. I'm constantly scanning. Rear view, side mirror, repeat. Every few seconds. It's almost automatic, like breathing. I always know where everyone is. That's part of why this still messes with my head. Because if this happened once, okay. Twice? Sure. 5 times? Maybe I'm tired. Maybe my brain filled in a gap. Maybe I got spooked by the emptiness of the road. But I'm telling you, it happened dozens and dozens of times. Over 100, easily. Enough that I stopped trying to talk myself out of it. Here's what would happen. I'd be driving one of those long, lonely stretches, sometimes 10 or 20 miles with no exits, no on-ramps, nothing. I'd be totally alone out there, just me and the road, and I'd know it. Because I'm checking my mirrors constantly, and I'm not seeing headlights, I'm not seeing movement, I'm not seeing anyone gaining on me from behind. Nothing. And then, suddenly there's a vehicle right there. Not fully beside me, but almost in my blind spot. Close enough that my stomach would drop, because my brain would go, "Where did you come from?" And I don't mean a car that zoomed up at 110 miles an hour and hit the brakes to pace me. I'm usually on cruise, steady speed, always a little over the limit, like 8 or 9 over. Enough to keep moving, not enough to get pulled over. If someone is coming up behind me, I'll see them long before they reach me. That's not arrogance. It's just physics plus obsessive mirror checking. But these cars? They didn't arrive like normal cars arrive. They were just there. The first few times, I remember thinking, okay, maybe I missed it. Maybe I blinked at the wrong moment. But it kept happening in the same way. No approach in the rear view, no gradual appearance, no sense of motion from behind. Just one moment there's empty lane, the next moment there's a car pacing me like it's been there the whole time. And the weirdest part is how they'd behave once they showed up. They'd just hold steady. Same lane, same pace. If I sped up a little, they didn't surge to match me like a normal driver might. They didn't fall behind. They'd just remain, like they were locked into a track. Sometimes I'd nudge ahead a few car lengths just so I could watch them better, and they'd still stay in that same relative position, like they were glued to a specific spot on the road rather than actually driving. And then, eventually, after 2 miles, or 10, or sometimes even longer, it would happen. I'd glance forward, like you do, because you can't stare sideways forever. Then I'd look back, and the car would be gone. Not pulling away, not changing lanes, not taking an exit, because there weren't exits. No on-ramps, no off-ramps, no other traffic swooping in to block my view. It would vanish the way people describe a ghost vanishing, like the world just corrected itself in the moment you weren't looking. 1 second, car. Next second, empty air. Sometimes I'd catch a hint of someone inside, usually just one person, more like a shape than a face. But the glass was always wrong. That's the best way I can say it. Not tinted exactly, not opaque, but like there was this dull gray haze inside the cabin, like the interior light didn't behave normally. With a regular driver, even at highway speed, you can pick up details: hat, beard, a bright shirt, sunglasses, whatever. With these cars, it was almost always just a silhouette. After enough of these experiences, I started trying to explain it to myself in a way I could live with. I landed on the idea of residuals, like a replay, something that happened once and left an imprint, like the road itself remembered a moment and kept playing it back. But even that explanation didn't quite fit, because if it were a replay, wouldn't it act like normal driving? Wouldn't it drift, or signal, or speed up, or slow down? These cars didn't do any of that. They felt fixed, like a prop on rails. And there's another layer to this, and I know how it sounds, but it's part of why I can't just shrug it off. Over the years, I've had a handful of people, total separate situations, not connected, tell me I'm sensitive, not in a vague horoscope way. Like, two different mediums I saw at different times, both told me I had the same kind of ability they did. And then, on a few random occasions in public, strangers approached me out of nowhere and said things like, "Someone wanted me to tell you something," and then they'd say the message, usually something weirdly specific and heartfelt. And then one of them looked me dead in the eyes and asked if I knew I was a medium. It's happened enough times that I can't pretend it's nothing. So, naturally, I started wondering, are those highway cars connected to that? Like, are they trying to get my attention? Are they deceased drivers? Or something that's not fully here, drifting into my awareness because I'm, I don't know, tuned differently? But then I'd circle right back to the same problem. If they're trying to get my attention, why do they behave like mannequins? Why don't they react? Why don't they do anything that feels like communication? And here's the part that makes me laugh at myself a little, because it took me forever to even think of it. I never tried to test them. Like, I never deliberately got in front of one and slowed way down to see if it would pass, or brake, or do literally anything. And I never got behind one and followed it while refusing to take my eyes off it. Not once. Not the way you do if you were determined to prove to yourself you weren't imagining it. Maybe because some part of me didn't want to know, or maybe because, even though I'm a careful driver, I wasn't about to do something unpredictable on an empty interstate just to satisfy a haunting curiosity. Eventually, I stopped traveling full-time, about 12 years ago now. And it's funny, because now we have all this cheap tech, dash cams, side cameras, systems that record everything around your car like it's no big deal. But back in those years, I didn't have any of that. I had mirrors and instinct, and a brain that would not stop tracking every vehicle in my orbit. Even now, though, I still catch them sometimes. It's harder in traffic, because the road is busy and you can lose track of a car more easily when there are 5 lanes of movement. But every once in a while, I'll get that same feeling. I know where everyone is. I'm scanning like always. And then, some random sedan, like an old compact or a faded SUV, is suddenly pacing me in that near blind spot position like it teleported in. And then, moments later, it's gone again. And I know how this sounds. I do. If it had happened a couple times, I would have buried it under brains are weird. But when it happens over and over, across years, across different highways, in broad daylight, at some point you stop calling it imagination. You start calling it what it feels like. A car that wasn't there. A presence you can't quite see. A silent thing pacing you for miles until the moment you look away, and the road becomes normal again. So, my brother Evan died a little over 3 years ago. It was sudden and brutal. He was driving home, and a drunk driver crossed the line and hit him head-on. For a long time, it felt like my whole life got split into before and after. The first year was honestly just survival. Then, slowly, painfully, I started to function again. I wouldn't say it ever stops hurting, but it stops swallowing you whole every second. Anyway, about 5 months ago, I went out with a couple friends to this arcade place, one of those loud, bright, chaotic spots where you can eat greasy food and play games until your hands cramp. We were trying to keep it light, normal, like real life. My friend Miles got locked in on this Pac-Man machine like it was a personal mission. He kept talking about getting to some ridiculous level, and I was cheering him on, half laughing, half zoned out the way you do when you're in a crowd, but your brain is elsewhere. At some point, I told him I needed a quick bathroom break. And while I was stepping away, this older guy who'd been kind of chatting with us, friendly, harmless, offered to hold Miles' spot so nobody jumped in and messed up his run. Miles was thrilled. I remember thinking, okay, cool, people can be decent. So I'm walking toward the bathrooms, weaving through noise and flashing screens, and I pass this enclosed game, like one of those sit-ins where you're inside the little booth. I think it was some kind of monster shooter game. 2 people were sitting in there, a woman and a guy. I should have just kept walking. That's the thing, I always just keep walking. But I heard a voice, just a laugh, like a single sound, and something in my body reacted before my mind could catch up. My stomach dropped so hard it felt physical. I slowed down and looked back. And I told myself not to be stupid. Don't do this to yourself. But I edged closer anyway and tried to peek inside without being obvious, just enough to confirm I was wrong. And that's when I saw him. The close-cropped haircut, the little silver hoops in his ears, the watch. Not the exact same one, but the same style, that weighty metal look. And then, the thing I couldn't explain away, the scar near the elbow, the one Evan got when we were kids and he tried to jump a fence like an idiot and sliced himself open. That scar had always been this weird little detail that made him him. My throat just moved on its own. I said his name. Quiet at first, then louder without meaning to. Evan? The woman didn't even pause. She kept playing, totally focused. But the man, he tilted his head, slowly, like he heard something familiar, and he turned to look right at me. And I mean, he looked exactly like my brother. Exactly. Not kind of resembles him, not same vibe, not maybe if you squint. I mean the same face, the same shape to his mouth, even that slightly tired set to his eyes. But there was no warmth in him, no recognition, no expression at all. He just stared at me like I was a stranger who'd said something weird. And I don't know why. I still don't know why. But my body hit panic, and I just left. Like I turned around and walked fast, almost running, back to where my friends were. Miles looked up like, "What happened?" And I told him, "We need to go. Like, now." We ordered a ride, but it wasn't going to be there for a few minutes, so we were going to wait inside near the entrance. And my friend Tessa, trying to be helpful, said maybe I should go splash water on my face, use the bathroom again, breathe for a second. She said she'd stand outside the door so I didn't feel alone. So I did. I went into the bathroom, and I remember gripping the sink and turning on the water too hard. My hands were shaking, and I kept telling myself, "You're fine. You're fine. You just got triggered. It's grief. It's your brain doing its thing." I'm washing my hands, staring at my own face in the mirror like I'm trying to force myself back into reality. And then someone else walked in. I heard the door. Footsteps. the sound of another faucet turning on right beside me. I looked up, and there he was again. Evan's face, Evan's profile, Evan's exact everything. For a second, I actually stopped moving, like my whole body forgot what it was doing. My hands were still under the water, but I wasn't washing them anymore. I was just frozen. He kept washing his hands like nothing was happening, and then he glanced at me. Just a quick look at first, then another, longer one. Not friendly, not confused, just this calm, flat attention. Like he was aware of me, but not with me. Everything about him lined up. The scar, the watch, the way he stood, a little forward in the shoulders, even the way his hairline met his forehead. It was like someone had taken my brother and copied him. Time got weird. It felt like forever. I swear it felt like I was stuck in that bathroom for an hour, but it was probably 2 minutes. He turned the water off. He dried his hands, and he walked out without saying a word. I stood there so long after he left that the automatic sink shut off on its own. When I finally walked out, Tessa and Miles were both like, "You okay?" And they did mention that a guy had come out a moment before me. They weren't really paying attention to his face, but Miles said, "I did notice his watch though, like a shiny silver one." Which made me feel worse, honestly, because it meant I didn't completely invent it. At least not the watch. Ever since that night, I've run the same questions through my head so many times it's exhausting. I know people hallucinate when they're grieving. I know our brains can fill in blanks. I know doppelgangers exist. I know coincidences happen. But why did he turn when I said my brother's name? Why did he look right at me like he heard it? And why, of all places, did he walk into that bathroom at that time? I tried to tell my mom, but she wouldn't even let me finish. She got this tight look on her face, like she was protecting herself from hearing it. She told me she thinks I need therapy because clearly I haven't healed properly. My friends, they don't know what to do with it. Sometimes they joke like, maybe you saw a ghost, and they laugh like it's a scary movie. But even they admit the watch detail sticks with them. And me? I don't know what I believe. All I know is this. I'm sure my brother is gone. I'm sure it wasn't actually Evan. But I'm also sure that for a few minutes in a crowded arcade bathroom, I was looking at someone who was wearing my brother's face like it belonged to him. So, 2 days ago, my husband, Eli, and I went to Hollywood Forever Cemetery. It's a place we end up a lot, honestly. There's a particular celebrity grave we visit pretty regularly, sometimes even weekly when it's hot out and we're looking for a quiet walk. We're heading there like we always do, and as we pass this completely ordinary-looking grave, nothing dramatic, no huge monument, just a normal marker, I have this weird little moment, like a snap of a memory that isn't mine. I remember seeing a young guy standing near it, and in that memory, he looks straight at me and says, clear as anything, "Hey, we were born the same year." I stop walking. My stomach does that drop thing. I turn to Eli and I start to say, "This is going to sound awful, but..." And then I cut myself off, because part of me is hoping I'm wrong. Part of me is hoping my brain is just doing some spooky pattern nonsense. So I walk back to the grave to check, like I'm proving something to myself. There are little succulents planted around the base of the marker, and I gently move them aside, almost like I'm stalling, like if I take long enough, maybe the numbers won't be what I think they are. And there it is. 1978. Not my year exactly, but close enough to hit the same nerve. Close enough that my whole body goes cold anyway. Eli comes over, and I can't even speak. I just point. He looks at it, then looks at me, and I can tell he's trying to translate what he thinks just happened. He says something like, "Maybe you heard same generation, or you thought of your own year and your brain filled in the rest." But that's the thing. I didn't think it. It arrived fully formed, like a line delivered. I try to act normal after that, like, okay, weird coincidence, moving on. Because what else do you do? How do you not make a big deal out of something that makes your spine feel like it's vibrating? But on the way out, I can't help it. I stop by the grave again. I tell myself it's just curiosity, just checking. But the truth is, the air around it feels worse, thicker, like the space is irritated with me. This time I ask Eli to hang back, because I have this sudden, very specific feeling that his presence isn't welcome. Not because he's done anything, but because he can't sense what I'm sensing. Like I'm the only one being addressed, and bringing a witness is rude. I step closer, and it's hard to explain this without sounding unhinged, but it feels like the young man, who I only saw in that delayed memory way, was asking me something. Like, are you going to turn me into a story? Are you going to make a thing out of this? And I felt myself answering, quietly, no, I'm not trying to do that. But I didn't feel believed. It felt like the connection, whatever it was thinning, cutting out, like a phone call about to drop. And right before it went dead, I got this sharp impression. Don't tell people. Which is ridiculous, right? Because I'm standing in a cemetery basically negotiating with a vibe. But that's what it felt like. And I should probably explain. As a kid, stuff like this wasn't rare for me. Not in the Hollywood ghost movie way. I didn't see full-bodied apparitions walking around. It was more like I'd have an experience, and then seconds later it would show up inside my head as a memory. Like my brain was recording something my eyes didn't fully catch. Then, when I was about 9, at summer camp, I had this counselor, older kid, probably high school, who made me a target. Not because I was disruptive, but because I wasn't interested in sports. I'd sit off to the side and do silly little tarot readings for other campers instead of caring about drills. One afternoon, before softball practice, that counselor told a couple of boys to teach me a lesson before he even walked over. And they did. Not like movie fighting, like real, humiliating, chaotic kid violence. It got stopped quickly, thank God. Someone saw. I got hauled to the nurse, then to the camp office. My parents came storming in furious, threatening legal action, the whole thing. The camp folded fast. The counselor was fired. They offered my camp fees covered for future summers. Hush money vibes, honestly. But the part that stuck with me wasn't the paperwork. It was the ride home. Because my parents, after all that, still somehow turned it into my fault. Like if I hadn't been weird, none of it would have happened. And that night, I took my tarot cards, my stupid little comfort object, and I threw them away. Not in a trash can. I shoved them down this old incinerator chute, like I was trying to erase the entire part of myself that wanted to believe in anything unseen. And it worked, sort of. I grew up and became a hard skeptic. The kind of adult who rolls their eyes first, explains later. I buried everything. I forgot what it felt like to have that kind of sensitivity, or at least I convinced myself I did. But now, 2 days after the cemetery, I can't shake it. I told one friend, my friend Jonah, because I needed to say it out loud to someone who wouldn't freak out. His reaction was basically, "Huh, that's creepy," and then we moved on. Nothing dramatic. Then later today, I'm sitting with Eli watching a movie. I'm fully engaged, relaxed, not even thinking about the cemetery anymore, and I see something. It's hard to describe. It's not like a glare or a reflection. It's this symmetrical shape of light, almost crystalline, like a solid object made entirely of brightness. Clean edges, too precise to be random. It hangs there in my vision for a moment like it belongs. I immediately ask Eli, "Do you see that?" He says no. And the second he says no, it disappears, like it hurt him. And then my glasses fog up. Not like normal fogging where you breathe wrong and they haze over. They filled from the bottom up, like a tide. I take them off, rubbing the lenses, and I ask him to turn on the light in the room. He fumbles for it for a second, and my vision is still blurry because without my glasses, everything's soft around the edges. Then he finally flips the light on, and suddenly everything is perfectly clear. Not better, not adjusted, clear, like my eyes snapped into focus without the lenses. I just sat there holding my glasses in my hands, feeling that same heavy, sour energy I felt standing by the grave. And that's the part that scares me the most. Because the cemetery thing could be coincidence, a stray thought, a creepy alignment of dates and imagination and grief in the air. But that light, whatever that was, it felt connected, like the same thread tugging again. And I don't like what it feels like when it tugs. So, I've gone back and forth on whether I even want to tell this story out loud, because it still makes me feel a little foolish. Not because it didn't happen, because it did, but because there's no neat way to explain it. Back in summer of 2022, my partner, Evan, and I agreed to stay at our friend Marisol's place while she and her husband were out of town. It was one of those easy favor situations. Water the plants, keep an eye on the house, enjoy having a little space. And from the moment we pulled into the driveway, something felt off. I didn't see a ghost or hear voices or anything dramatic like that. It was more like my body knew something my brain hadn't caught up with. Within the first hour, I started telling Evan, "I feel weird." That was the only word I had. Weird. Foggy. Like I was walking through a thin layer of static. At first, we blamed the house itself. It was an older home. This was in Central Texas, and it was brutally hot outside. And little things kept going wrong. The Wi-Fi would drop out constantly. The air conditioning struggled and then fully quit one afternoon. There were bugs in places you don't want bugs. Annoying, but plausible. But then the stranger things started stacking up, and that's when it got hard to keep shrugging it all off. The first incident was me getting locked out. I went out the back sliding door, and somehow the lock flipped when I slid it shut. I remember laughing at myself like, okay, I'm just clumsy. Fine. But the second time, I still don't know what to do with it. I ran out the front door to grab something from my car. I was gone maybe 15 seconds. When I came back, the deadbolt was turned, locked, like someone had calmly reached over and locked it behind me. Evan was in the shower. Nobody else was there. I just stood on the porch, sweaty, holding my keys, staring at the door like, how? And here's another weird detail. My period, which is usually extremely regular, just didn't show up. It was late enough that I actually bought a pregnancy test, which for me is not normal. I kept thinking, okay, stress, travel, heat, whatever. But it felt different than a normal off month. My body felt like it wasn't syncing up with itself. The freakiest part was how clearly I could track the feeling to the house. If we left to get coffee or run errands, I'd feel basically normal again. We'd pull back into the neighborhood, and I'd start getting that cloudy sensation. By the time we were inside, it was like someone had draped a heavy blanket over my thoughts. Not sadness exactly, more like my nervous system was bracing for something I couldn't see. One evening, we had Evan's friend Tasha stop by to pick something up. We were all standing near the hallway, chatting, and she suddenly paused mid-sentence and went, "Did you feel that?" We all did. It was this cold gust, like someone opened a freezer door inside the house. Except the air conditioning was out at the time, and outside it was well over 100 degrees. That cold wasn't nice cold. It felt wrong, sharp, sudden, and specific, like it had intention. We laughed it off, because what else do you do? But the laugh was thin. Then came the thing that still makes my stomach drop. One morning, Evan woke up and said his shoulder hurt. When he rolled over, there was a red handprint on the back of his shoulder, like someone had grabbed him. And it wasn't a vague mark. It was so clear it looked staged. The scariest detail was that there were little blister-like spots at the ends of 3 middle fingers, like pressure points. That was the point where the rational explanation started running out, and the denial started feeling like a choice. We finally decided, okay, we're leaving. Hotel. Now. As we were packing up, the lights in the hallway, right around the spot where the cold gust happened, started flickering. Not the whole house, just that area, like someone was tapping a dimmer switch. And even trying to book the hotel felt bizarrely difficult. The website wouldn't load. The confirmation wouldn't go through. Our phones kept glitching. It was one of those sequences where you keep saying, "Why is this so hard?" And then you realize you've been saying it for 20 minutes, and you're both irritated and tense, and you can't even explain why. When we finally got to the hotel, I took a shower immediately. Like the second the door shut behind us, I just wanted the day off my skin. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, within an hour of being there, after the shower, I felt like my head cleared, and my period started. Just started, like my body exhaled. For a long time, Evan and I didn't even call it anything. We weren't haunted house people. We didn't grow up with that belief, and we weren't looking for a spooky story to tell at parties. It was only later, when we replayed the whole week, lockouts, the foggy feeling, the cold gust, the handprint, the flickering lights, that we finally said the quiet sentence, "Do you think something was wrong with that house?" Here's the twist, too. Marisol and her husband never mentioned anything strange. Not once. They stayed in that home for over another year after that and loved it. They have such warm memories from that time, and we never told them. We didn't want to plant something in their heads. We didn't want to sound dramatic, so we swallowed it and moved on. Except, I didn't move on. A few weeks later, I started getting this nagging pain in my lower abdomen. At first, I thought it was a bladder infection. I did all the home remedy things, water, supplements, the whole "maybe it'll pass" routine. I even went to an acupuncturist and tried to treat it gently, naturally, like I always try to do. But it didn't go away. Eventually, after actual medical appointments and tests, I found out I had a uterine infection connected to my IUD. Not an STD, just an infection that had taken hold. I had the IUD removed, did the treatment my doctor prescribed, and I thought, okay, that's it. We fixed it. Then, months later, it came back. Another round. Then a second round, stronger antibiotics, back to back. And after that, my body just didn't feel like my body for a long time. The abdominal pain lingered, and I started suspecting my gut was suffering from everything my system had been through. Digestion off, energy off, everything just fragile. And my mental health took a hit too. I've had mild anxiety and depression in the past, nothing I couldn't usually manage. But during that year, it felt disruptive in a way I hadn't experienced before. Like my baseline shifted. like I couldn't get back to myself. I'd be doing the same healthy routines, eating well, exercising, spending money on supplements and doctors and all the things, and still feeling like I was treading water. It got to the point where I had to take time off work, and I can't even explain how defeating that felt. Like I'd done everything right and still ended up flattened. This past year, I started a gut healing protocol and eventually antidepressants, and I am doing better, physically and mentally. I can feel myself coming back online, but I still have this thread in my mind that I can't quite cut. And I know how that sounds. I do. I can hear myself saying it and wanting to immediately follow with, but I'm not saying I believe in ghosts. I'm not even trying to convince anyone of anything. I'm just telling you what it felt like. It felt like walking into a place where my body didn't want to be. It felt like leaving and suddenly breathing again. And it felt like something in me never fully settled after. And I guess that's why I'm sharing it now, because I don't need a scary label for it. I just want to understand whether an experience that intense, whatever it was, can leave marks that last longer than the week it happened. And if it can, I want to know how people actually heal from that. So, these are some of my very first memories. They're not in perfect order because this was over 30 years ago, and childhood memories are kind of like that, little snapshots in a shoebox. But they all happened in the same place, this older house in Austell, the one I grew up in for a while. And what's funny is, after all of this, I never had anything like it happen again. Not once. Part of me honestly wishes I had, just for the proof of it. Like, come on, universe, give me a sequel. Anyway, when I was little, I had this toy record player, bright plastic, the kind with those thick, chunky records you could practically use as coasters. I was sitting there messing with it one afternoon, and out of nowhere, sound started coming out of the speaker. Not the normal, scratchy toy sound either. It was like something real was trying to come through. I can't remember what it was saying or playing, only that it wasn't supposed to happen. It lasted maybe a few seconds, and then it stopped like nothing happened. I tried so hard to make it do it again. I pushed buttons, swapped records, smacked the side like that would help. Nothing. Just dead silence. At night, sometimes after everyone was asleep, I'd hear dishes clink together in the kitchen. Real subtle, like someone was carefully stacking plates, but nobody ever got up. I'd lie there listening, feeling that weird mix of curiosity and, I should not be hearing this. My bed was positioned so I could see straight down the hallway if I turned my head just right. And one night, I'm lying there, staring into the dark like kids do, when something peeks around the corner of the doorway. A skeleton. Not like a Halloween decoration, not like a silly cartoon, just a pale, bony face and a hand, leaning out, looking straight at me. And then it lifted its hand and gave me this little wave, like we were neighbors. And I just watched it. I didn't even scream. I was too young to fully understand what should scare me. Another night, I was asleep on my stomach, and I felt a hand drag down my back, like a slow clawing motion. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to snap me awake. I remember freezing, holding my breath, and then doing that thing kids do where you convince yourself if you don't move, you'll be fine. The next morning, I asked my parents, my mom, Renee, and my dad, Mark, if either of them had come into my room. They both looked genuinely confused and said no. And honestly, the early stuff didn't terrify me. It was just strange. Like the house had its own little secrets. But the next things, those scared me. And I'm telling you, these are as clear in my head as if they happened last week. One night, I woke up and my bed was moving. Not shaking like a passing truck, not wobbling like a kid climbing in. Moving, shifting, lifting, like it couldn't decide if it wanted to stay on the floor or float. And then I heard two men talking, calm, like they were having a conversation in another room, except they weren't in another room. They were right there, in the dark, near me. I remember whispering, really small, "Hey?" And one of the voices immediately snapped back, "Be quiet, kid." Not yelling, just sharp, final. So I did what any sensible child would do. I shut my mouth, pulled the covers over my head, and stayed there like a statue until morning. And that became the pattern. If something impossible happened, I hid and waited for daylight to save me. Not long after that came the one that still makes my stomach tighten when I think about it. And she started praying with me. The bedtime prayer. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. I was half asleep, listening, letting the rhythm calm me down. And right in the middle of it, she started to fade. Not like she stood up and left, not like she walked away. She just thinned out, like fog, like someone turning down a dimmer switch on a person. I panicked. I sat up and screamed, full volume, "Mama!" Just screaming for her like my whole life depended on it. And here's the part that messes with me the most. It felt like my voice didn't go anywhere, like the sound stayed trapped in my room, like I was screaming inside a bubble. Because a second later, my real mom, Renee, came rushing out of my sister Tessa's room into my doorway, hair a mess, eyes wide, like I'd startled her. But not like she'd heard me, more like she'd sensed something was wrong. And right behind her, this is the part I can still see if I close my eyes. Soldiers came running past her in full uniform. Not one, several. Boots pounding, moving fast, like they were charging through the house. My mom didn't react to them, not even a flinch. And I just vanished under the covers again, like that blanket could make me invisible. Then there's the last one, the final story. The one that has such a bizarre detail that I almost hate saying it out loud, because it sounds like something you'd make up. I got out of bed and went to my parents' room. I climbed in between them the way little kids do when they need safety. They were both deeply asleep, like not even stirring. I lay there for a minute, finally calming down. And then I heard a voice, low and close. "Hey, kid." I looked toward the foot of the bed, and sitting there, clear as day, was a ventriloquist doll. Not a cute toy, a real-looking one, with that stiff posture and that grin that doesn't feel friendly. I didn't know who it was back then. I learned later it looked exactly like that old character, the classic dummy people call Charlie. But at the time, it was just a talking doll at the end of my parents' bed. It asked me my name. Then it asked my mom's name, my dad's name. Just questions, casual, like it was taking notes. And the more it asked, the colder I felt inside, because it wasn't playful, it wasn't joking. It was curious in a way that felt wrong, like it didn't belong there but wanted to. So I did my usual move. I hid, pulled the covers up, squeezed my eyes shut, and waited until my fear ran out of oxygen. Years later, I actually wrote the people who live in that house now. I just asked if anything strange had ever happened to them. I didn't accuse, didn't get dramatic, just asked. They never responded. And that's it. Those are the Austell memories, little flashes of impossible things. Sometimes I wonder if the house was haunted, or if childhood has some doorway we grow out of. Like when you're young, you're tuned to a station nobody else can hear, and eventually, you lose the signal. But I swear, those nights felt real. And even now, telling you this, I can still feel exactly what it felt like to pull that blanket over my head and pray morning would come faster. So I'm going to start by saying I can't prove any of this. No video, no photo, nothing like that. And I'm still the kind of person who questions everything. But I wanted to share this anyway because it genuinely brought me some comfort. And maybe you can tell me what you think. I lost my mom a few days ago, and honestly, it's been brutal. I've never lost someone that close to me before, and I wasn't prepared for how exhausting grief is. Like, not just emotionally, physically too. It feels like my whole body has been carrying something heavy. I had a therapy session today. I usually do them online because it fits with work, but since I'm on bereavement leave, I did it from my living room. And I ended up walking my therapist through everything. What happened leading up to my mom passing, and then the weird, hollow aftermath, where the world keeps moving, even though you feel completely stopped. At one point, I surprised myself by saying out loud what I've been quietly begging for. I just wanted some kind of sign. Anything. I wanted her to let me know she was okay, and I wanted her to know I love her. And here's the part that's hard to explain without sounding, I don't know, dramatic. But I told my therapist I also wanted my mom to know I forgive her. Her and I weren't perfect. There were old hurts, complicated stuff, the kind of things you shove down and pretend don't sting. But in that moment, none of it mattered. I didn't want bitterness to be the last thing hanging between us. I just wanted her to know I don't hate her. I never did. I miss her. I love her. That's it. So we're in the middle of this. My voice is shaky. I'm trying not to cry too hard. And then I start hearing this sound. It was like a sharp clicking, almost like someone flicking a light switch up and down over and over, kind of aggressively. It was so distinct that I stopped mid-sentence and said, "Maya, hold on. I need to see what that is." I got up and followed it through the house, and it kept going. Click, 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 like it wanted my attention. I traced it all the way to an open window. And sitting outside, right on the ledge, was this big crow. It was loud, too. It was making a racket, bobbing around, tapping at something with its beak, just making itself impossible to ignore. And I know this sounds small, but it hit me immediately because I've lived here for almost 3 years, and I swear I've never seen a crow anywhere near my place. Not once. Maybe I've heard distant birds, sure, but not a crow right there, basically announcing itself. It stayed for less than a minute, and then, just like that, it was gone. I stood there for a second, kind of frozen, and then I went back to my laptop, still feeling weirdly stunned. I told my therapist what happened, and I said something like, "I know crows can be associated with death, but I'm pretty sure there's more to it than that." So I grabbed my phone and looked it up, just a quick search, nothing deep. And the first thing that popped up said something along the lines of, "Crows are believed to be spiritual messengers." I stared at the screen for a long second, because the timing felt so specific. Like it wasn't random. Like it happened right when I said, out loud, that I wanted a sign. Right when I said I wanted my mom to know I loved her and forgave her. Right when I asked for anything. And listen, I know coincidence exists. I know grief makes you look for meaning. I know a bird can just be a bird. But I can't shake how it felt in my chest in that moment. Not scary, not ominous, just almost like a firm little nudge. Like, "Hey, I'm here. I heard you." Because I'll tell you this, after that crow showed up, something in me loosened. I've felt calmer. Not fine, not over it, not even close, but calmer in a way I haven't felt since she died. Like my body unclenched a little, like I could breathe without fighting for it. So I'm sharing this because I honestly don't know what to make of it, and I'd really love to hear what you think. Do you think that was a sign? Or do you think it was just a strange, perfectly timed coincidence? So, this happened not long ago, maybe an hour and a half back. I woke up in that way where your eyes are open, but your body still feels like it's halfway in a dream. I was unsettled and a little scared, but not panicky, just that sharp, alert kind of fear, like my system was telling me, something's off, be ready. I can't remember the dream clearly, but I'm pretty sure it was tangled up with this novel I've been reading lately. The tone of it, you know? Like the book leaked into my sleep. And here's the weird part. I think I woke up because I heard a shout. Except it wasn't a real sound in the room. It felt like it came from outside the dream, but also not from the waking world. I know that's a strange thing to say. It was more like a jolt of, "Hey!" that landed in my head and snapped me awake with this instant sense that I needed to defend myself from something. My bedside lamp was on. I'd apparently fallen asleep with it that way, and a couple other lights down the hall were on too. Not the main hallway light, but enough to spill a soft glow toward my doorway. And then I saw it. Right in the doorway, hovering maybe chest height, like 4 feet off the floor, there was this red thing. Not a person, not a shadow, not a shape I could name. It was about as long as my hand, maybe 8 or 9 inches, and it looked like a short line of round beads, 5 or 6 little spheres, all connected in a rough row, like beads on a string. They weren't spinning or flying around. They were vibrating, just trembling in place. I got out of bed, and I remember grabbing my quilt like it was a shield. That's the best way I can describe it. I didn't dramatically decide to do that. My body just did it. My emotional state didn't really change as I moved closer. I didn't feel this wave of evil or anything like that. No sense of a presence trying to communicate. I also didn't feel calm. It was more like my fear stayed steady. And then there was the extra fear that comes from adrenaline, because I was now standing up and moving towards something I didn't understand. As I got closer, I felt this thrumming sensation, like when a hummingbird or a big insect hovers close to your ear, and you feel that vibration more than you actually hear it. I don't think it was a sound exactly, just a physical feeling pulse in the air. The color was a maroonish red, somewhere between a cherry and a dark crayon red. Not bright like neon, not dark like dried blood. It gave off this faint impression of glowing, but it wasn't lighting anything around it. The room didn't get brighter. It was just slightly self-lit looking, like it had its own quiet intensity. I edged forward into the hall, and by then it had drifted, slowly, casually, like it wasn't in any hurry, into the space around a folded step stool that was leaning there. Still hovering, still vibrating. So I did the most practical thing I could think of. I threw the quilt over the step stool like I was trapping a cat or covering a box, and then I backed up a couple steps and just stared at it, heart thumping, trying to decide what to do next. A minute or two passed where nothing happened, and then, this is the part that made my stomach drop because it felt so mechanical. The quilt bulged near the bottom, close to the floor. Not the whole blanket shifting or sliding. More like something pressed outward from underneath, about 6 inches off the ground, and then released. The fabric pushed out and fell back in exactly the way it would if something small had slipped out from under it. And there were 2 details that made it harder for me to brush off. First, the dog. His name's Boone, and he's the kind of dog who thinks his entire job is to announce reality to the whole neighborhood. He barks at squirrels, wind, delivery trucks, his own reflection, anything. He's also the type who usually plants himself between me and anything unfamiliar, especially in that part of the house. But during all of this, he wasn't there. Not guarding, not investigating, not even curious. A few minutes later, he was back in his usual spot like nothing had happened, calm as could be. Even now, he's lying near my door, relaxed, not acting spooked at all. Second, my mom. She's in the room next door right now, staying with us. She's been fighting cancer for years, and we're close to the end of that road. Not like tonight or tomorrow, but close enough that everything has that quiet heaviness in it, like the air itself is aware. So when something strange happens in the house, especially at night, it's hard not to wonder if it means anything, or if my brain is just scanning for meaning because of the emotional pressure of this time. And honestly, if it weren't for that quilt movement at the end, after I'd been awake for a couple minutes, after I'd walked around, I'd probably shrug and say it was one of those half-dream things that sometimes bleed into waking, like sleep paralysis without the paralysis. I've had moments where I swear I'm seeing something, and it turns out to be a tiny LED on a smoke detector or a reflection off a glass surface. Just my brain finishing a dream sentence while my eyes are already open. But that bulge, the something exiting feeling, that's what stuck. So that's where I'm at. Not trying to turn it into a horror story, not claiming I know what it was, just wanting to know whether this kind of thing matches anything other people report, and whether there's anything I should be mindful of if it happens again. So, for a stretch of time, I had this job cleaning a library before it opened, like way before it opened. I'd show up while it was still dark out, let myself in, do my whole routine in this big, quiet building, and be finished long before the staff or the early patrons ever arrived. Honestly, it was kind of perfect. Peaceful. Just me, a mop, and the echo of my own footsteps. Sometimes I miss it. The thing is, this library had a history. A couple of years before I started working there, someone had been killed inside the building. Just a horrible, heartbreaking situation. And I'm not even kidding. I'd completely forgotten it was that library when I took the job. It didn't click until I'd already been there a while, and when it finally hit me, it was like, oh, right, this place. Now, I'm not saying the building felt spooky because of that. I mean, it did feel eerie, but a huge, empty library at 5:30 in the morning, with the lights buzzing and the rest of the world still asleep, that's creepy on its own. You don't need ghosts for that. But the first thing that started getting to me was the bathrooms. Everything in there was motion activated, sinks, toilets, the whole deal. And every time I'd get close to the front entrance from outside, I'd hear it. A bunch of sinks and toilets triggering at once, like a little chain reaction of sensor clicks and running water somewhere deep inside the building. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured the sensors were just touchy, cheap system, old wiring, whatever. Except, it always stopped a few minutes after I came in, and I didn't put that together until later. Like weeks later, maybe longer. Because when you're tired and it's dark and you're just trying to get your shift done, your brain will excuse a lot. Eventually, I mentioned it to someone I knew who worked there during normal hours, my friend Lena. And she kind of frowned and said, "That doesn't happen during the day, like, ever." She told me maybe one sink might misfire occasionally, sure, but a whole bunch at once? No. Not a thing. And that's when I started thinking, okay, that's weird. But listen, if there was something lingering in there, and all it did was throw a little tantrum by setting off the sinks when I showed up, I could live with that. Honestly, I'd be annoyed too if I was trying to rest eternally and some guy comes stomping in at dawn with a bucket and disinfectant. Then one morning, this is the part that still feels so clear when I think back. I was in the main entry area, wringing out a cleaning rag over my cart. My head was down. The library was silent, like it always was, and I had a straight line of sight to the front doors from where I stood. And the doors started rattling. Not the wind caught it kind of rattle. The kind where you can tell someone's on the other side, tugging on the handle, testing it, trying to get in. Now, that actually wasn't unheard of. Sometimes someone would show up early because the outdoor book return would jam, or they'd see the lights on and assume we were open, or they'd just be confused. So I didn't look up right away. I just kept wringing the cloth like, "Hold on, I'll get to you in a second." The rattling kept going for another beat, and then I heard footsteps. Clear as day, firm steps on the entry carpet, moving inward, coming toward where I was standing. And then, nothing. Total silence. No door opening, no greeting, no shuffling. Just footsteps that seemed to start and then stop, like someone hit a mute button on reality. I still remember the exact feeling in my stomach, like my body had already accepted the answer before my eyes confirmed it. When I finally looked up, of course, empty. The doors were shut. The entryway was blank. No person, no shadow, no movement. Just me, standing there with a damp cloth in my hands, suddenly very aware of how big and hollow that building was. And the strangest part? It didn't terrify me the way you'd expect. I think by then I'd already decided the place had something going on, and it had never felt aggressive. Annoyed, maybe. Restless. But not mean. So it was more like being startled by an unexpected roommate. Like, "Oh, you're here again." Still, it messed with my head for the rest of the shift. And just to be totally clear, there's no way it was a person. I never heard the door open. And even if someone had quietly slipped in, it wasn't a huge library. I would have run into them. There's just no way someone could enter, walk toward me, and then vanish without me seeing them or hearing anything else. Later, I was talking about it with another friend, Miles, and he got this look on his face and went, "Okay, that's wild," because I had something similar happen. He told me that once during his shift, he was cleaning near the restrooms and heard someone come into the bathroom. Like the door, the steps, the whole thing. He waited, thinking they'd need privacy, and then a minute later he heard the door again, like they'd left. So he went over, expecting to see someone heading down the hall. Nothing. Empty hallway. Empty bathroom. No one anywhere. And that was the moment where I just kind of sat back and went, "Yeah, okay, so it's not just me. So, yeah." For a while, I cleaned a library before sunrise, in a building that had tragedy in its past, and the place would wake up in strange little ways when I arrived. And I'm not saying I know what it was. I'm just saying, it definitely felt like I wasn't always alone in there. Okay, it's going to be a long night, so let me just tell you about the first time I ever had something paranormal happen to me. I grew up in Louisiana. Swamps, old cemeteries, porch stories, the whole vibe. Everybody there has folklore they swear is real. But honestly, I never had my own ghost story back home. Just the ones you hear from somebody's cousin's friend who wouldn't lie about this. My first real encounter didn't happen until after I moved to California. So, where I live now, there's this apartment complex with a pool in the middle courtyard. During the day, it's a zoo. Kids, music, people yelling across the water like they're trying to communicate with dolphins. The posted hours say it closes at 10 p.m., but nobody enforces it. The gate doesn't even latch right half the time, so the rules are mostly just decorative. That night, my roommates had friends over and the apartment was loud. I was trying to read, but it was impossible. So I grabbed my book, my vape, and went downstairs to sit on one of the lounge chairs by the pool. Just me, the night air, and the kind of quiet you only get when most people are asleep. Now, here's the thing. This complex has its own little urban legend. Everybody who's lived here for more than 5 minutes has heard it. Supposedly, a child drowned in the pool years ago, and the kid still hangs around. The details shift depending on who's telling it, like a campfire story that's been passed through too many mouths. One version says the child was left unattended, and people sometimes hear him wandering the breezeways calling for his mom. In that story, they call him Eli. Another version is darker. The kid was hurt on purpose by a mother's violent boyfriend, and some residents claim that around the late hours, you can hear a tiny voice begging for help. And then there's the version that almost sounds playful. A security guy told someone the spirit acts like a little prankster, misplacing things, tapping on doors, and sometimes you'll hear this small giggle like it's hiding behind a corner. Do I believe any of that? I didn't want to. I even looked it up because I'm that person. No public record of a child drowning here, but I did find a drowning at a different complex nearby with a similar name. Different circumstances, different age. So I figured it was probably just neighborhood myth, you know? Stories getting mashed together over time. Anyway, it's late, like somewhere between 11 p.m. and midnight. I'm sitting there reading, taking pulls from my vape, feeling relaxed for the first time all day. And then I hear it. A giggle. Not loud, not obvious, just faint. Like it drifted through the air for half a second and landed right behind my ear. I froze, but I didn't immediately go full horror movie brain. I told myself, it's probably nothing. Someone's out walking, maybe a teenager. Maybe the sound carried weird. So I try to keep reading. A couple minutes pass, and I hear it again. Another little giggle. Same tone, same place, like it's coming from somewhere behind me. And right as I'm starting to feel my skin crawl, the shrub line behind the lounge chairs rustles. Not a gentle rustle either, like something pushed through it. I stood up immediately. I didn't even bookmark my page, just snapped the book shut like, nope, I can live without knowing what happens next chapter. And I'm trying to be rational, right? We've got big lizards around here. I've seen fat raccoons too. Any of that could have rattled the bushes. Wet footprints. Little ones. Leading away from the pool area and into the small utility room where they keep the towels and cleaning stuff. And I'm standing there, staring at these footprints, like my brain is trying to decide whether to believe what my eyes are telling it. Then I hear a voice. High-pitched. A child's voice. Close. Hey, come here. No, absolutely not. I did the exact opposite. I backed up, turned, and walked as fast as I could without full-on sprinting, because in my head I'm thinking, don't look crazy, just leave, just go. But here's the part that still messes with me. As I made my way back toward my building, I could still hear that giggling, like it followed me, like it was right behind me, just out of sight, laughing because it knew I was scared. And I didn't get the feeling of innocence. That's what I can't explain. It didn't feel like a kid playing. It felt mean, like whatever it was wanted a reaction, like it wanted me to turn around, like it wanted me to feel small and cornered, even out in the open air. Now listen, I know the obvious explanation is that it could have been an actual child, but it was so late, and the voice sounded young. If there really was a kid out there at midnight, barefoot and wet, hiding around utility rooms, then somebody needs to be asked some serious questions. And maybe that's all it was. But I'll tell you this, when I got inside, locked my door, and finally exhaled, my hands were shaking. And I've tried replaying it 100 different ways, trying to make it make sense. I'm open to interpretations. I really am. I just know what it felt like. And whatever was out there that night, it didn't feel like it was just passing through. It felt like it was enjoying it. Hey, I'm going to try telling this again, just softer this time. I really do need advice, not judgment, especially about apps or anything that could help me document what happened. So a few nights ago, the AC in my room was acting up. The house was warm and sticky, and I couldn't get comfortable, so I moved into the guest room because it has that little window unit that actually works. I climbed into bed, turned the lamp off, and immediately my cat, her name is Junie, came padding up like she'd been waiting for me. That room is basically her space. She can roam the whole house, but she's always claimed the guest room like it's her kingdom. She crawled right onto my lap and pushed her face into mine, purring like a tiny engine. I was laughing quietly, rubbing her cheeks, letting her boop her nose against mine. The curtains were open on the big picture window behind the bed, so even with the lamp off, the room wasn't pitch black. I could still make out the shapes of things. Let me paint the layout, because it matters. It's a full-size bed. Across from it is the wall with the bedroom door and a closet. On the right side of the room, there's the window unit and a dresser. On the left side, right beside the side of the bed where I was lying, there's the bathroom door, an old cedar chest with a couple books stacked on top, and a small second closet. Junie was purring in my face, and I was giggling, and then something near the cedar chest caught my eye. I turned my head, kind of lazily at first, and I saw what looked like a person standing there, only about 3 feet away from the bed. Their back was to me. They had long, thick hair, like heavy hair, the kind that holds its shape. It looked uneven, like it had choppy layers. The hair went down to about their waist, and the height, maybe 5'6"? Not super tall, but not small either. And then the part that keeps looping in my brain. From the hips down, the legs just faded, like the lower half wasn't fully there. Here's the weird thing. I wasn't terrified. I know how that sounds, but it's true. I felt calm. Confused, but calm. Like my brain was trying to solve a puzzle instead of panic. I just stared. I honestly stared for a long time. Maybe 30 seconds, maybe longer, waiting for it to click. Waiting to realize, oh, it's a coat, or it's a shadow, or it's the curtain doing something weird. Because that's what logic does, right? It tries to save you. But it didn't shift. It didn't dissolve into anything normal. It stayed exactly the same. A person-shaped figure, back turned, hair to the waist, fading at the legs. So I reached over to my nightstand where my phone was, thinking, fine, I'll just turn on the screen light. I'll see what this actually is and laugh at myself. I tapped the screen on, and instantly the glow ruined my night vision. The bright rectangle basically turned into a little spotlight in my face, and suddenly, I couldn't see past it the way I could before. And that's when my heart started to go. I fumbled for the lamp switch beside the bed. My fingers felt clumsy, like they belonged to someone else. I clicked it on. Light flooded the room, and there was nothing there. No hanging clothes, no object tall enough to make that shape, no weird lamp shadow angle, no curtain doing anything dramatic. The space by the cedar chest was just empty floor and furniture. Normal, ordinary, nothing. And that's when I finally got scared. Not when I saw it, when I didn't. Because if it had been an illusion, there should have been something, anything, to explain why my eyes made that exact image. But there wasn't. The next day, I told my cousin. She's also my roommate. It's her house. When I described it, her face just drained. Like someone pulled the plug. and she said really quietly, "You know, my sister's boy used to sleep in that room." I swear I felt cold crawl up my back, because I had forgotten for a second. He's been gone for a few years now. His death was tragic. He was so young, and the details, God, the details, lined up in a way I didn't want them to. The height, the hair, even Junie. She used to be his cat. She adored him. I haven't slept in that room again. It's hot as anything in the house, and I'll still choose discomfort over going back in there right now. My cousin told me something else that made my stomach twist. She said that night she heard me making noises, like I was talking, and at one point I sounded like I was yelling in my sleep. I don't remember that part, but I believe her. And now I'm stuck in this awful in-between place. I love him. I miss him. And I feel guilty that the thought of that room makes me uneasy, like I'm rejecting him somehow. But I also can't ignore how it felt, how real it looked, how the room offered me zero explanation when the light came on. So I keep thinking, maybe I should try sleeping in there again. Not to provoke anything, not to hunt anything, just to understand what happened. And if something happens again, I want to document it. That's the part I actually need help with. How do you record in the dark without blinding yourself? Are there apps that can record continuously without eating up storage instantly? Is there a way to have a phone start recording only if it detects motion, so I don't have to lie there awake and anxious waiting for something to happen? I don't even know what I'm hoping to prove. I just know I don't want this to stay as a blurry memory in my head that I can't sort out. And I really don't want people being cruel about it again. I just need tips, real ones, so I can either rule it out or understand it, without feeling like I'm losing my mind. Hey, can I tell you something that's been sitting in my chest for years? I don't even know where to start, except that I've had this feeling, this heavy, watchful feeling, that something has been trailing me. Not just me either, like it found my family and never fully let go. It really began when I was about 8. I remember waking up one night and sitting straight up in bed, heart racing, because I swore I saw my grandpa in my bedroom. And beside him, this is the part that still makes my skin prickle. I saw a figure I believed was Jesus. My grandpa looked calm, almost relieved. He spoke to me, gently, like he didn't want to scare me, and he said he was going somewhere better. The next morning I told my mom, still half shaking, and she went quiet in a way I didn't understand. Later that day, we found out my grandpa had died, and that it had been the day of his funeral. I didn't even know there was a funeral. So yeah, that's the first thing that made me wonder if my life had a crack in it, like the world wasn't sealed the way it's supposed to be. Not long after that, I was playing with my toys in the living room, totally alone. Sunlight in the windows, nothing scary about it. And then I heard someone call my name, clear as day. Mila. That's my name, or it was back then. I froze. I called out, "Mom?" But the house stayed quiet. I walked through every room, checked behind doors like a little kid does, trying to be brave, but there was no one. And the weirdest part is, the voice felt familiar, like something I knew, but also like something that didn't belong in my home. I tried to shake it off. I really did. But then there was Corinne. She was this woman my family knew. One of those people who smile a lot, but somehow the air feels colder when they enter a room. My parents thought she was just intense. In hindsight, there was something wrong with her. We didn't understand it at the time. Years later, 3 men connected to her ended up dead, one after another. 2 were ruled suicides. One was complicated, and everyone around her had that same uneasy story. I don't know why, but I felt off near her. Back when I was still a kid, she showed my mom this old book. Not a cute little antique. I mean a strange one, like it had weight to it. She said it was some kind of witch book, and she talked about it with this smug confidence, like she had access to things other people didn't. And then she gave us a gift. A wardrobe. Big, heavy, with a mirror on the door. I hated that mirror. I didn't know why at first, I just hated it. Corinne didn't like me. I could feel it. She used to look at me like I was an obstacle, like she wished my dad belonged to her instead of my mom, like my existence had stolen something from her. That wardrobe ended up in the hallway near my older sister Noemi's room. One afternoon, I walked past and saw a shadow shape, tall, too tall, sitting on Noemi's desk like a person, but wrong, not solid, not human, just a presence shaped like one. I blinked and it was gone, but I didn't forget. After that, my fear started changing. I wasn't just scared of the dark like most kids. I became terrified of being alone in the house, like deeply, irrationally terrified. If someone took the trash out and left me inside for 2 minutes, my chest would tighten. I'd start listening for footsteps that weren't there. And I never outgrew it. And sleep. Sleep got ugly. I started having intense nightmares and sleep paralysis. The kind where you wake up and can't move, and you know you're in your room, but you also feel like something is in there with you. Sometimes I'd hear breathing. Sometimes I'd hear that same half-familiar voice. It wasn't every night. It was worse in waves, like storms. Eventually, we moved away from Corinne. New place, different neighborhood, fresh start. Everyone acted like we were finally safe. But that's when it got worse. Because for the first time, it wasn't just me. My mom saw shadows. My sister saw them. Even my stepbrother at the time, Lucas, said he kept catching something in the corner of his eye, like a figure slipping behind furniture. We tried to laugh it off. We tried to blame stress, bad lighting, imagination. Then I hit a breaking point. Depression grabbed me by the throat, and I ended up in the hospital after I tried to end my life. I'm not saying that for drama. I'm saying it because that's when I saw him again. There was this old man, hospital clothes, thin gray hair, skin like paper. He was standing at the foot of my bed, looking down. His face wasn't kind. It wasn't neutral. It was cruel. Like he was enjoying the fact that I was trapped there. I told myself I was exhausted, that grief and medication and fluorescent lights can make your mind do weird things. But then I saw him again. Same man, same expression. And when I finally worked up the courage to tell my mom, her face drained. She looked straight at me and said, "I've seen him too." That chilled me in a way I can't explain. After that, he showed up in 2 nightmares and 1 sleep paralysis episode, and then, nothing. Years of quiet. Like he had gotten bored. Or like he was waiting. Then my dad died. Sudden. Brain tumor. So fast it felt unreal. Like the kind of thing that happens to other families, not yours. After that, Noemi developed chronic pain. Then I did too. And then it was diagnosis after diagnosis. My body collecting problems like it couldn't fight anymore. Sometimes I wonder if it's just life. Genetics, stress, the way grief rewires your body. But sometimes, it feels like a pattern, like something fed on the cracks. Recently, my depression flared up hard again, dangerously hard. And with it came that old familiar fear, that sense of being watched. The sleep paralysis, the nightmares. I keep trying to be rational. I tell myself, you're tired, your brain is stressed, you're scared so you're interpreting normal things as threats. But then little things happen that don't fit. Like one day, I was messing around with an AI chat, just for fun, and I took a photo of the area in my apartment where I used to feel that presence. When it generated a description, it created this image of a man that didn't look exactly like him. But it looked like my Uncle Thierry, who had died only a few weeks before. And it wasn't even subtle. It hit me in the stomach, like someone had reached into my grief and pressed. Another time, I was walking through the woods near my place, morning routine, because moving helps keep my legs from hurting so much. I was talking out loud to the same chat, joking about creepy story ideas because I write little horror pieces sometimes. And immediately after, the conversation crashed with an error message. I know how that sounds. I do. But I remember stopping mid-step, the forest suddenly too quiet, and thinking, okay, that one felt wrong. I got desperate enough that I talked to someone who sells protection. They told me I attract something, some kind of parasitic spirit, especially when I'm depressed, especially when my thoughts get dark. They gave it a name I can't even remember now, but the idea stuck to me like burrs. And honestly, part of me hated hearing it, and part of me felt this sick relief, like, finally, someone is taking me seriously. I tried burning white sage once, but someone else told me it could make it worse, that it draws more attention, that I might be ringing a bell instead of closing a door. And then there are my cats. Cats don't fake it, you know? Sometimes at night, they'll stare into a corner like someone's standing there. One of them, Knox, will puff up and growl at nothing. And recently, during a sleep paralysis episode, I couldn't move, couldn't speak, and I heard Knox growl again, right beside my bed, as if he sensed something I couldn't fight. There's one more thing I don't talk about much. I went through a long stretch where my sleep paralysis wasn't just scary, it was violating. I'd wake up trapped, terrified, feeling like something was trying to hurt me in a way I can barely say out loud. It wasn't a normal nightmare. It left me shaken all day. It made me afraid to sleep alone for a long time. And in the background of all of this, there were always whispers. Stories people told in the building, the neighborhood. Rumors about strange rituals years ago. Someone insisting there had been a sect or work done there, like the place itself was marked. I don't know what I believe. I really don't. I just know that my fear doesn't feel imaginary. It feels personal, like something learned my name when I was a child and never stopped listening for it. And right now, with my depression rising again, it's like the old door in my mind has started to creak open. So, that's it. That's what I've been carrying. And I guess the scariest part isn't even the shadows. It's not knowing whether I'm haunted or just exhausted in a world that keeps finding new ways to hurt people. But either way, it feels like I'm still not alone. Okay, so listen. This happened in the middle of the day, not even at night, which honestly makes it creepier. There were about 10 or so of us hanging out on the reserve. This was up near Ontario, and we were bored, just wandering like we always did. Someone suggested cutting through this patch of woods. Nothing serious, just a walk. But then we found it. It looked like someone had set up a little camp back there. Messy, half hidden, like it wasn't meant to be noticed. And the second we saw it, the vibe changed. We naturally split up into smaller groups, kind of fanning out without even planning it, just to get a better look, like we were surrounding it. And that's when we noticed the trees. There were fish guts hanging from branches, like Not the normal cleaning of fish leftovers. I mean everything. The parts you don't use. Strung up like decorations. At first we're whispering, like, what is this? And who even does this? And then we see him. This guy is balled up right in the middle of the camp, just rocking back and forth, humming to himself. Real steady, real calm, like he's in his own little world. One of my buddies, Ethan, does this nervous laugh, like he's trying to break the tension. And the guy stops. Not gradually, not like he noticed something. He stops dead. He lifts his head slowly, then turns his eyes to the side, toward the half of us Ethan wasn't standing on. And then, inch by inch, he turns his face toward Ethan like he's tracking him without even needing to move his body. And then, in this almost sing-songy voice, like a little girl's voice, he goes, "I see you." I swear to you, the guys on that side didn't even think. They just ran, full sprint back toward the house we'd come from. But the rest of us, me and a few others, we were stuck on the other side. Like, we couldn't just run straight without cutting closer to him, and nobody wanted to be the first to move. So we just watched him. He didn't blink, didn't shift, didn't do anything. And we start backing up, like actually backing up low, trying not to be seen, almost like army crawling because it felt safer than standing. We're moving so slow, we're barely breathing. And then his head turns toward us, smooth as anything, and he says it again in that same voice. "I can see you." That's when we bolted. We took off, crashing through brush, not caring how loud we were anymore. And behind us, we could hear running, like heavy footsteps, close, way too close. We hit the edge of the woods where it opens into a field, and we kept running because nobody wanted to be the one who stopped first. My lungs were on fire, and when we finally looked back, he was standing at the tree line, not chasing anymore, just watching, like he wasn't allowed to leave the forest, or like he didn't need to. We got back inside, and everyone's talking over each other, trying to piece it together. And that's when it got even weirder, because the first group, the ones who ran right after Ethan laughed, were like, he chased us. We heard him right behind us. And we were like, no, we watched him. He didn't move until he turned to look at us. So how are both things true? And on top of that, you know those stories people tell on the res? Like not leaving your blinds open at night because something will try to get you to come outside or try to get you to let it in. Yeah. And then, this part isn't even from that day, but it's connected. My buddy Mason's girlfriend told us she fell asleep on the phone with him one night and heard 3 separate rounds of knocking. Like a pattern. She got annoyed and, the third time, she mumbled something like, "Stop, you're being annoying," thinking it was him messing around. But she woke him up and he was confused as hell. Said he didn't hear any knocking at all. So, I don't know. I'm not saying it was a ghost. I'm not saying it was anything specific. I'm just telling you it didn't feel normal. And we're not trying to hype it up or make it some big thing. We're honestly just curious. Like, what was that? And should we actually be worried? Or is this just one of those things you're better off not poking at? So, this happened back in 2017, during one of those Southern California summers where the heat feels like it's sitting on your shoulders. I'm going to tell it the way I remember it, no big dramatic add-ons, because honestly, it was already strange enough. At the time, I was running this small little shop out in Palmdale. Nothing fancy, just trying to keep the doors open, putting in long hours, doing that daily grind thing. I lived in Thousand Oaks, pretty low-key life. Family nearby, My brother Marco over in Van Nuys. Nothing wild going on, except something had started changing in me. Quietly, privately. For a few weeks, I'd been meditating every night. And when I say privately, I mean nobody knew. Not Marco, not my parents, nobody. I didn't really have some big spiritual plan. I'd just gotten curious, and then curious turned into consistent. And I got fixated on one thing, the third eye. I'd sit on the floor in my living room with the lights low, legs crossed, eyes closed, breathing like I was trying to sink into that spot between my eyebrows. I'd picture this deep blue light. Sometimes I imagined it like a small flame instead of a lotus, like something flickering awake. And the more I did it, the more I felt it. Pressure, warmth, little waves of tingling that would build and spread. It wasn't scary. It actually felt kind of incredible, like I'd found a hidden switch inside myself. I didn't have a teacher, no mentor, just instincts, a couple guided videos, and me showing up night after night. Then one afternoon, I'm closing up at the shop, wiping down the counter, ready to head out, and Marco pulls up out of nowhere. And that alone was unusual. He didn't just casually drop by. It was a solid drive for him, and he wasn't the type to make that trek just because. But there he was, leaning against his car like it was no big deal. We talk for a bit outside the storefront, just catching up, and then he goes, real casual, like he's asking if I want tacos. Hey, there's this woman staying at my place right now. She's from Louisiana, really spiritual. You should come through tonight and meet her. And I remember laughing a little, like, of course you have a random spiritual house guest right now. And I told him no. Not rude, just firm. Nah, I'm good. And he didn't push. He just nodded like, all right. So I lock up, get in my truck, and start heading home. The drive is the usual. Freeway, fading sun, that orange dusk that makes everything feel a little hazy and slow. But somewhere along the way, I start feeling guilty. Because my brother doesn't just show up like that. And it hit me like, he made effort. The least I could do was make effort back. So I call him, and I'm like, hey man, sorry about earlier. I'll come by tonight. And I swear to you, the exact moment I committed to it, the moment I said yes, boom, this sound, this violent, blunt, impossible explosion just detonates inside my head. Not like a ringing, not like a headache, an actual bang, like a firework went off behind my eyes. I slammed the brakes so hard I'm shocked nobody rear-ended me. My heart is pounding, and I'm gripping the steering wheel thinking, I hit something. I blew a tire. Something's wrong with the truck. I'm still on the call, and I shout, did you hear that? And Marco goes, completely calm, hear what? What are you talking about? Which made it worse, because if it was real enough for me to nearly pull off the road, how did he hear nothing? We hang up fast. He says someone from work is calling him. I pull onto the shoulder, jump out, and start checking everything like a maniac. Tires, front bumper, under the truck, inside the cab. Nothing's fallen, nothing's leaking, nothing is wrong. There's just nothing. A few minutes later, my phone rings again. Marco. He goes, that call I got? One of my employees just got into a small accident on the 101 near Thousand Oaks. And my stomach drops because that was basically the exact stretch I'd been driving toward. The same corridor, the same direction, the same energy. Like the bang in my head echoed out into the real world somewhere nearby. I end up swinging over with him to check on it. Nothing major, just a bumped bumper. Everyone rattled, but okay. Still, the timing had me feeling like reality was playing some kind of joke. After that, we go straight to his place. It's late, around 10ish, and his house guest is asleep, but she wakes up when we come in. She's older than I expected, softer voice, calm in a way that made me feel like she already knew something I didn't. We're in the living room, and she looks at me for a long second. Not in a dramatic way, more like she's listening to something I can't hear. Then she steps close and lifts her hands above my head, not touching me, just hovering, like she's feeling for heat. She says, "I'm going to clear you a little." And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, what does that even mean? But I let her do it because, honestly, after that freeway moment, I didn't feel like arguing with mystery. Her hands move slowly from above my scalp down toward my forehead, like she's guiding something downward. And I feel this strange sensation, like gentle tugging, like invisible threads loosening. Not painful, just unsettling. Like something's being pulled out of me that I didn't know was there. And then she drops her hands. And the instant she does, the entire house goes black. Total power outage. No lights, no hum, no background noise. Just sudden dead silence, like the world held its breath. And I'm sitting there in the dark, frozen. Nobody's talking. You can feel how thick the air gets when something unexplainable happens and your brain can't file it away. Then, slowly, the power returns. Lights flicker. Appliances reboot. That refrigerator click. The whole house waking back up one piece at a time. But when the lights come back, the room feels colder. Like the temperature dropped 10 degrees. And here's the thing I still can't fully explain. After that, it was like something in me had been shut off. All that pressure I'd been feeling in meditation, gone. The tingles, the rush, the sense of something opening, gone. Like someone hit a reset button and wiped the whole charge clean. I drove home later that night with my mind looping the whole chain of it. The secret meditations, my brother randomly showing up, me finally saying yes, that inner explosion, the oddly timed real-world accident, the woman clearing me, and then the blackout like some kind of seal on the whole thing. And I remember thinking, it felt like synchronicity, but turned up so loud it couldn't be ignored. Like the universe wasn't whispering anymore, it was straight up making eye contact. It's been years now, and that whole third eye fireworks feeling never came back. No more buzzing, no more pressure, no more electric highs. But maybe that was the point. Maybe it wasn't meant to be a permanent thrill ride. Maybe it was meant to wake me up, clear something out, and leave me with something quieter, something steadier underneath. And I'll be honest, sometimes I miss the intensity. But the longer I live with it, the more I wonder if what I got afterward, this calmer kind of awareness, was the real thing I was supposed to keep. Okay, so before I tell you this, you need a little context about my brother, Caleb. He's one of those people who can be charming for 5 minutes and then immediately make you regret trusting him. He's not like a full-time criminal or anything, but he's definitely the type where you're always bracing yourself for the next bad decision. Back then, Caleb was living with his girlfriend Tessa and her family. I was still at my parents' place. Anyway, Caleb and Tessa had this huge blow-up fight. One of those fights where everyone in the house can hear it even if nobody wants to. And they ended up getting kicked out. So, naturally, Caleb came crawling back home. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I hated it. Not even in a dramatic way. I'd just gotten used to the peace, the quiet, the feeling that I didn't have to watch my stuff or lock my door or deal with that constant tension he brings into a room. But there he was, stomping around like he owned the place, acting like he was the victim in the whole situation. He only stayed with us for about 10 days before he and Tessa patched things up, and he went right back over there. But during that short time, something happened, and he didn't tell us right away. He waited until later, at this family get-together, when it was just my parents, my sister Mara, Caleb, and me sitting around after dinner, half listening to him rehash the fight like it was a courtroom testimony. Mara was asking questions. My mom was making those little worried noises she makes. My dad had that, "say one more word and I'm leaving the room" stare. And Caleb's going on and on until he gets to this one night. He said it was late, like really late. He'd gotten home from work after everyone was asleep. He didn't want to wake anybody up, so instead of going to the bedroom, he just crashed on this old daybed in the TV room. Not even with proper sheets, just a throw blanket and one flat pillow that always smells faintly like detergent and dust. He said he lay there, staring at the ceiling for a bit, and then he drifted off. And here's where his voice changed when he told it. Like he was trying to joke, but he couldn't quite make it sound funny. He said he woke up, but not fully, like he was stuck halfway between sleeping and being awake. He could see the dark room, the outlines of furniture, the glow from the digital clock across the hall. He could hear the house settling, but his body wouldn't move. Not a finger, not his head, nothing. And then he said he felt something shift near him. Not footsteps, more like a presence, like the air got heavier. He told us it was like a shadow peeled itself away from the corner of the room. Not a person exactly, just wrong. And it moved toward him, quiet as smoke. And then, this is the part that made my skin crawl even though I kept my face neutral. He said it climbed onto him. He said he felt pressure on his chest first, like someone had sat down right on his ribs. Then he felt hands, cold, heavy hands, wrap around his throat. He tried to yell. He tried to swing. He tried to do anything. But he couldn't. His whole body was locked, and the harder he fought, the worse it got. He said he could feel himself starting to suffocate, that panicked animal feeling where your brain starts screaming at you that you're running out of air. And right when he thought, this is it, I'm actually going to die on this stupid daybed, he said the room changed. Not like the lights turned on, more like the darkness thinned. He said he felt this warmth, like when you walk into a room that's been sitting in sunlight all day. And then there was this gentleness, a presence that wasn't heavy, wasn't threatening, just calm, familiar. He swore he felt her the way you feel someone standing behind you, even with your eyes closed. And he said, as soon as that warmth came in, the thing on him recoiled, like it got yanked back, or like it suddenly couldn't hold on anymore. The pressure lifted, the hands vanished, and Caleb said he finally sucked in this huge breath like he'd been underwater. Then, just like that, his body unlocked. He could move. He sat up, shaking, looking around the room like he expected to see something lingering in the corner. But there was nothing. Just the TV room, the daybed, the quiet house. And he said he didn't sleep after that. He stayed up until morning with all the lights on, pretending he was fine. When he told us, he tried to act tough about it. Like, yeah, it was weird, whatever. But I could see it in his eyes. He was genuinely rattled. What messes with me is, nothing like that has ever happened to me. Not once. I've never seen anything, never felt anything. And yet, when Caleb tells it, it's like he's describing something that really happened to him, down to the detail of how it felt to breathe again. So I don't know. Was it something paranormal? Was it just his brain? Sleep paralysis, stress, guilt, all of it crashing into one nightmare that felt real? And I guess what I'm asking you is, if someone you knew told you that story, and you could hear in their voice that they weren't making it up, what would you think it was?